Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome to this course on Microsoft Windows 10. My name's Deb and I'm going to be your instructor for this course, and this is the first introductory section. I'm going to go through a little bit about myself. We're going to review who this course is for. I'm going to talk you through the structure of this course, and then finally I'm going to cover some of the assumptions I'm going to make. So first, just a little bit about me. So I'm a Microsoft IT trainer and I specialize in the design, delivery and facilitation of Microsoft courses, both online and in the classroom. And I've been using Windows in its various different versions for about 25 years now. So I've really been able to see how Windows has evolved since around the mid-90s up until the present day. Now this course is designed for Windows 10 beginners. So if you've never used Windows 10 before, then this course is going to be perfect for you. Also, if you're used to using a much earlier version of Windows, and when I say earlier version, I'm talking about something like XP or maybe even Vista, then again, this course is going to be perfect for you because Windows 10 is so vastly different from those two versions of Windows. However, if you are coming to this course from a more modern version, so I would say Windows 7, Windows 8 or 8.1, then you're still going to get value from this course because Windows 10 has a lot of differences, but there might also be some things which are very similar to the version that you're used to using. So what I would say to you is if you're going through this course and you get to a module and you think to yourself, this is very similar to the version that I currently use, then by all means skip over that module and move on to the next one. Now when it comes to the structure of this course, I'm going to try and go through the course logically. I'm going to cover all of the sections in sequence. Now this course is made up of a number of different topic related sections, and within each section you'll find a number of modules. Within each module there will be a demonstration video, and those videos will be up to 15 minutes long. You'll also find scattered throughout this course, usually around one per section, you will have an exercise to complete. So the purpose of these exercises is really just to give you a chance to practice some of the skills that you've learnt in that particular section. And then at the end of the course, there will be a quiz, which will just test your knowledge of the overall course. So it gives you a really good chance to see how far you've come from the beginning of the course to the end. Now the final thing I want to mention in this module is the assumptions that I'm going to make. So I'm going to assume that you have an installed copy of Windows 10. And you'll see in the following modules that there are a few different versions of Windows 10 as well. I'm also going to assume that you're going through this course on a desktop PC or maybe a laptop. And what I mean by that is that you're not practicing Windows 10 on a mobile phone device or a tablet. Now, tablet is very interesting. You'll see when we get into Windows 10, there is an option to move into tablet mode, which is specifically related to tablet users. Now, I'm not going to focus on that in this particular course. Everything I show you is going to be more related to desktop mode for desktop, PC, and laptop users. However, I would say that if you do predominantly use a tablet, you're still going to get value from this course because a lot of the features I demonstrate in desktop mode are not that dissimilar to the tablet mode, but just bear that in mind as we go through. Now, with all that said, if you don't have Windows 10 already installed, we're actually going to cover that in the next module. So I'm going to head over there now, so I will see you there. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this section we're going to be talking about how you can acquire Windows 10 if you don't already have it. Now just for clarity, I am using a laptop device. It's running Windows 10 and you can see here I have a very nice desktop picture background of a beach. And this is just one of the standard backgrounds that's available from within Windows. And I'm going to be showing you how you can personalize all elements of Windows, including how you can change up your desktop background picture in later modules. But this module is about acquiring Windows 10. And I would say that if you already have Windows 10 on your PC or on your laptop, this is one of the sections that you can skip. However, if you don't already have it, then stick with me because we're going to go through a number of things in this module which are going to be really important for you to know. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to identify which version you are on. I'm then going to show you some of these system requirements for running Windows 10. I'm going to show you how you can acquire or download Windows 10 if you don't already have it. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between Microsoft accounts and local accounts. And then I'm going to speak to you about how you can upgrade or install Windows 10. Now, I will add that in this demonstration, I'm not actually going to install Windows 10 because I already have it, but I'm going to show you where to go, how you do it, and give you a few tips along the way. So let's start out this module with how you can identify which version of Windows you're using. And for this, you're going to need to look at your system information. Now, in order to pull that up, there is a quick shortcut way of doing that. You need to hold down the Windows key. So if you've never used the Windows key before, if you look down at your keyboard and find where your spacebar is, you'll find that it's either one key or two keys to the left of your spacebar, and it looks like a little tiny window. That is your Windows key. So what you need to do is hold down the Windows key and press the pause key on your keyboard. And you'll find that located somewhere over on that top row towards the right hand side. Now some keyboards, and this does include mine, you may have to add in the function key in order to get pause to activate. So for me, I need to press the Windows key, function and pause to quickly get to my system information. And you can see here, I can now see which version of Windows 10 I'm using, and it's telling me at the top there, Windows Edition, Windows 10 Home. So this moves me on quite nicely to talk about the different editions of Windows that you can download. So I'm just on the Windows homepage of the Microsoft website, and you can see here it's saying to me, compare Windows 10 Home versus Pro. So these are the two main versions that you're going to be dealing with, Home or Pro. And I just want to point out at this stage, Microsoft do tend to like to change up their web pages. So what you see here, what I'm seeing on this page, by the time you work your way through this course, this page may have changed very slightly. But as always, if you jump onto Google and type in Windows Home or Windows Pro and Microsoft, it's going to take you to the relevant page. Now, if you want to do a comparison between Windows 10 Home versus Pro to see which one's going to best suit your needs, if you scroll down this page, you'll see you get that direct comparison. So you can see all of the features that are included in Windows 10 Home and all of the features that are included in Windows 10 Pro. And as you would expect, you do get slightly more features in Windows 10 Pro. Now I will say, and there are a few more features down here, there's only really a couple more extra features that you get with Windows 10 Pro. So the fact that I'm using Windows 10 Home for the purposes of this course is going to be absolutely fine. Everything I need to show you is covered in Windows 10 Home. But if you are considering which one you want to download, I would come onto this page, have a read through, and then make the decision as to which one is going to best suit your needs. And one thing I will say is that Windows 10 Home is probably suitable for the majority of people. I would only download Pro if I needed to do something like maybe join a business domain. So if I needed to connect to a domain at work, then I would need to download Windows 10 Pro. Now, if you're not really 100% sure, it's definitely worth checking with your IT team at work and asking for their advice as well. Now, there's also a couple of other editions of Windows, Enterprise and Education. The Enterprise version is available by volume licensing, and most very large organizations will have some kind of enterprise license. I will say that you can't just walk into a shop and buy the Enterprise version, and the same is also true for the Education version, which is mainly for teachers and schools. Now, both of these versions are outside of the scope of this course and we won't be covering them, but just be aware that there are those two additional versions as well. Now, another thing that you should definitely check prior to downloading Windows 10 is your system requirements. And what we mean by that is what is the minimum required in order to be able to run Windows 10 on your PC, laptop or tablet successfully. And again, if you jump on or Google Windows 10 system requirements, it will take you through to the Microsoft support site, and you can see there on this page what your system requirements are for running Windows 10 successfully. Now, when it comes to acquiring or downloading a copy of Windows 10, you can jump on to the Microsoft Store. Now, I'm currently in the US Microsoft Store, but make sure that you go into the correct one for your location. And you can see here I have an option to purchase the various different copies of Windows 10. And if we jump into the Windows 10 Home, I'm going to click Shop Now. And you can see that you have two ways of obtaining your copy of Windows 10. You can choose to download it, and I would say these days that is the most popular, it's instant. Or you can choose to get it on a USB or flash drive. Now, as I said, most people do get it via the download, but it's worth bearing in mind that you're going to need at least 3 gig of spare space on your PC to enable you to download a copy of Windows 10. Also, if you don't have a particularly great internet connection, it might be better for you to get the USB version. Because sometimes if your internet connection isn't particularly great and you choose to download a very large file, which this is, that can take a very, very long time, tying up all of your system resources and possibly preventing you from doing other things. So bear that in mind when you're choosing which option you want. Now, the Microsoft Store isn't the only place that you can go to purchase a copy of Windows 10. There are many, many other websites out there which are selling copies of Windows 10. I would advise, however, that you do try and buy from a reputable source. And also, we still have what is sometimes termed as the old-fashioned way. You can walk into your local computer store. So if you're in the UK, that might be something along the lines of PC World, and you can pick up a physical copy of Windows 10 to install onto your PC or laptop. So a few different options for you. By far the most convenient is this download option from this page. Now, in the following modules, we are going to set up an account on our PC in Windows 10. And one thing you're going to need to decide is whether you want to use a Microsoft account or a local account. And by default, you will be asked to use a Microsoft account. And it's a very straightforward process to set this up on Microsoft.com, and we are going to go through that in one of the later modules. But I just want to briefly introduce the concept to you in this particular module. Now, there are pros and cons to each, and I've actually just jumped on to the Microsoft Support Forum. So this is a community forum where people post questions and then other people provide answers. And you can see here someone has asked the question regarding Microsoft accounts versus local accounts on Windows 10. And they actually get a really good comprehensive answer just here, which is definitely worth a read through. But to give you a basic overview of the difference between the two, a Microsoft account gives you essentially a single sign-on, which is similar to a Google account or something like Facebook. If you log in or operate under a Microsoft account, it gives you access to things like OneDrive. You can also download apps, so using a Microsoft account makes things really convenient. But there is a little bit of a cost to that. And the majority of the cons with regards to Microsoft accounts are related to security. Now, I'm not going to delve into this too much at the moment, but I will say that if you're not really sure if you understand the difference between the two, it's definitely worth jumping onto Google, Googling Microsoft account versus local account, and doing a little bit further reading. As I said, I am going to go into this a little bit more when we get to that module, but it's good to give yourself some background knowledge. And this particular answer is pretty detailed, which is why I like to show this particular answer. Definitely worth a read. Now, a local account is one that's just set up locally on your PC. And it's worth noting that if you do choose to set up a local account, you can switch it to a Microsoft account later. And with a local account, each user of the PC has a separate account. It's standalone, so it's good for security. So it might be that you have 3 members in your family and everybody uses the same PC. You may want to have a different account for each member of the family. So when they go to the PC, they click on their name, they log in, and it's got all of their settings, all of their shortcuts, everything that they need, which is completely different to the other accounts that are set up locally on that machine. So that's definitely one thing to think about, local account versus Microsoft account. So I'm now back at the Windows Store, which was the page that we were on previously. So when it comes to upgrading or installing Windows 10, we've seen how simple that is. We just scroll down, we select the version that we want to download, and then we can choose how we want to download that, either by electronic download or USB. If I just click back to go back to this home page, you can see at the top here it says ready to upgrade to Windows 10. Now I would definitely click on check compatibility if you're upgrading from an older version of Windows. And again, this is where you'll have all of those system requirements for installing Windows 10. So make sure that your PC or the device that you're using meets all of those requirements before you go in and purchase your copy of Windows 10. Now, if you have any trouble when it comes to installing Windows 10, I would always advise you just refer to Microsoft.com. They have some really great support pages, and you can normally, through reading, research, asking questions, seeing other people's questions, you can normally fix your own problem. So, having downloaded Windows 10, you should be ready to start using it. So that's exactly what we're going to do in the next module, where I'm going to walk you through how to get started using Windows 10. So I will see you over there. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course on Windows 10. In this module, I'm going to show you how you can get started in Windows 10. So we're going to start out by taking a look at starting Windows 10 and also some of the lock options that you have. We're going to go through the desktop. We're then going to take a look at the start menu. And I'm going to show you some options you have when it comes to working in tablet mode. I'm also going to show you the options you have for shutting down Windows 10. So if you're all ready, let's get started. Now when it comes to starting Windows 10 or logging out of Windows 10, one option I want to start with is the lock screen. Now the lock screen is particularly useful if you are at work and you've got lots and lots of different applications open, and maybe you just need to pop away from your desk. Maybe you need to go to a meeting, or you're going to lunch or on a break, and you don't really want to close down everything that you've got opened on your screen, but at the same time you don't want just anybody to be able to walk up to your PC, wiggle the mouse and access all of your applications. So a good option here is to lock your screen. It's going to keep everything running and open in the background, but it's going to pop up a password so that somebody can't just jump onto your PC and look at everything that you have open. So the quickest way to lock your PC is to press Ctrl, Alt, Delete. Now what you see I get is I just get my desktop background picture, and this is a different one that I have on my actual desktop. And it just shows some basic information that I have on my lock screen. And as with always in Microsoft, what you see on here is customizable. So I have the time and the current date. I can also see in the very bottom left-hand corner, it's telling me that I have 3 email notifications. And then on the right-hand side, I can see that I am connected to Wi-Fi, and I can also see the percentage of battery power that I have left in my laptop, and you can also see that I actually have it plugged in and charging at the moment. So once you lock your screen, when you come back to it, all you need to do is to click on your screen anywhere, and it's going to take you to your lock screen, and it's going to ask you to log in. Now again, on the bottom left-hand side, you can see that I have 2 accounts set up on this laptop. So I have my account that's currently highlighted, and there's also somebody else who has access to my laptop with a local account. So make sure that you select your account, and then you're going to be asked for your PIN or your password. Now I prefer to have a PIN, but that really is just personal preference. And again, in some of the later sections, I'm going to show you how you can specify if you want to log in with a password or if you want to use some kind of PIN. You can see above that I have a picture of myself. And then underneath that I have a link. If I forget my PIN, I can get a reminder, and I've got a direct link to my sign-in options just there. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, again, we have some symbols. So it's telling me that my keyboard is English United States. I can see my Wi-Fi connection. I can see I have ease of access turned on. And then I have my power button if I want to do something like shut down completely. Now at this stage, I'm just going to log back in by typing in my PIN. So now I'm back on my desktop. So whilst we're here, let's just do a very quick tour around the Windows 10 desktop. Now on the main part of the screen in the top left hand corner, you can see I've got a couple of icons there. I have a recycle bin and I also have Microsoft Edge. Now these are desktop icons, and some people have a lot of desktop icons, other people not so many. Now I'm in that latter group. I tend not to have too many icons on my desktop. I prefer to have my icons pinned across the bottom in my taskbar. But again, this is very much personal preference. And what these desktop icons are essentially shortcuts to the applications. So if I want to quickly access my recycle bin, I can just click on the shortcut from here, and it's going to jump me into my recycle bin. The same thing with Edge. If I wanted to open up the Edge internet browser, I can double click and it's going to take me there straight away. So desktop icons will appear on your desktop, and I'm going to show you how to create those a bit later on. Now running across the bottom, now we have the Windows key, which is our start menu. Now we're going to cover the start menu in a lot of detail in some of the following modules, so I'm going to leave that for now, but it is a very important button. We then have the search bar. Again, we're going to cover that in later modules. I then have a number of icons on my taskbar, and these tend to be the applications that I use all of the time. So you can see I have on there a lot of the Microsoft applications, so Excel, Word, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. I have a couple of internet browsers. I have the Camtasia software that I use to record these videos. I have a link to File Explorer so I can quickly access my documents, and also a very quick link to my settings as well. Now again, what you see down here is very much personal preference, and I'm going to show you how you can essentially add things or remove things from this taskbar again in some of the following modules. And then finally, right over on the right hand side, we have our notification area. And in older versions of Windows, this was referred to as the system tray. And again, the icons that you see down here are customizable. Now I like to have icons that display information that's useful to me. So I like to see if I have my volume muted. I like to see what my battery life is. I like to see my Wi-Fi connection. And then of course I have the time and the date there as well. And then finally, right on the very end, we have this kind of, it looks like a little bit like a speech bubble. This is the Action Center. And if I click on this, this gives me an overview. So I can see there at the top very easily the last 2 emails that I've received. And then I have a number of different tiles that I can essentially click on or click off to toggle on and off. So you can see at the moment, the only 2 of those that I have turned on are Wi-Fi, because I am using a Wi-Fi connection, and I also have my location running as well. But for example, if I wanted to turn on Bluetooth, I could just come over here, click on the Bluetooth tile, and that's going to very quickly turn that on for me. Now this little Action Center and all of these tiles again can be customized to what's going to be most useful to you. And as you might have guessed, we are going to cover this in a later module. Finally, at the bottom there, I can very simply adjust the brightness of my screen by dragging this slider up or down. So lots of options in there. Now, before we leave this module, I want to briefly jump back to this Start menu. And there's quite a lot to cover in the Start menu, so I really want to just introduce you to the Start menu in this module. Now the Start menu you'll find under this little Windows icon all the way over on the left hand side. So you can either click on the Windows icon to pull up the Start menu, Or alternatively, if you press that Windows key on your keyboard, that's going to allow you to access it as well. Now, this start menu has been a bit controversial over the years. So for anybody out there who used Windows 7, if you can remember back to that, Windows 7 was very much just the menu part of this screen. Then when we moved on to Windows 8 and 8.1, Microsoft introduced these tiles that you can see just here. And a lot of people really didn't like just having the tiles. They missed that menu. So kind of what we have in Windows 10 is a compromise, a combination of both. So we still have our old Windows 7 style menu system, but we also have tiles there as well if we want to use them. Now again, we're not going to delve into this too much in this module, but I just want to make you aware of some of the things that you have on here. So if we start with just this menu running down the left hand side, you can see there we have access to our power options if we want to shut down or restart. We have a quick way of accessing our settings. I can jump directly to my pictures folder and also my documents folder. So if I click on documents, this essentially is going to open up File Explorer and jump me straight to my documents folder. And then I have access to essentially my profile, my account on this PC. Now moving across to this middle section, this is where you'll see all of the apps and applications and facilities that you have on your PC. And these are all listed in alphabetical order. And any applications that you've added recently to your system will be listed at the top. So you can see here that recently I downloaded or installed Microsoft Edge, and I also downloaded Microsoft Teams as well. Now, if I want to scroll through this list, you'll see that I have a little scroll bar at the side here. So I can then scroll through and I can look at all of my applications. And as you might expect, if I want to open one of these applications, I can just select it from the menu in order to open that application. Now, all of these letter dividers, so you can see here where it says A, where I'm currently hovered. If I click on A, it's going to take me into this little alphabetized panel. So if I want to jump to something in particular, so maybe I'm looking for something related to Microsoft, I can click on M and it's going to jump me straight down to that part of the menu system. So don't forget that you have that there as well. And then on the right, we have our tiles. So these are very much those Windows 8, Windows 8.1 style tiles. Some people love these, some people hate them. I'm a little bit like, I don't tend to use them so much, but I do know a lot of people who do really like using them. Now, I don't have mine particularly customized or set up in any particularly nice logical sequence, but what you can do is you can add any of your applications or apps as tiles. You can organize them into different groups. So you can see at the top here, I have Life at a Glance, which is one of the groups that Windows 10 automatically creates for you. You can rename these groups, you can add more, and you can add whatever tiles you want to into those groups. And again, it's just a quick way of being able to access your applications and any apps that you have. So if I wanted to open Excel, I can just click on this Excel tile, and that's going to go away and open Excel for me. So very, very simple to use. Now, as I said, I'm not going to speak a lot in this course about tablet mode, but I just want to show you, if you are using a tablet, where you can go to switch on tablet mode essentially. So I'm going to go back to my start menu. I'm going to press my Windows key, and I'm actually going to go to settings. I'm going to click on this little cog icon. I'm going to click on System. And you'll see here in this long list of options, one of the options we have is tablet mode. Now, I like to keep the when I sign in option to use the appropriate mode for my hardware. And that's because when I sign in, Windows is going to automatically detect if I'm using a tablet or if I'm using a desktop. And it's going to switch the mode depending on which one it picks up. And when you switch into tablet mode, what it essentially does is it optimizes all of the Windows features for a tablet device. So for example, it will give you more room in between icons because it's allowing for your finger as opposed to a mouse cursor. Now, you don't have to have the use appropriate mode setting. You can set it to use tablet mode permanently. So if you work permanently on a tablet, you can just switch into that mode and have it start up in that mode every single time. There's a few other options in here for customizing tablet mode, which you might want to look at if you do use a tablet device. Now, saying that, an even quicker way to switch into tablet mode, and this is particularly useful if sometimes you work on a desktop and sometimes you work on a tablet. If we go back to that Action Center in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see one of the tiles that I have here is tablet mode. So I can very quickly toggle it on or toggle it off depending on what device I'm using at any given time. Now, finally, I just want to talk to you about shutting down Windows 10. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you can just press the power button on your device, although I would say that sometimes that's quite a harsh way of shutting down your PC. I would always recommend, if you are just going to switch it off, make sure that you've fully saved everything and properly exited all of your applications. Don't leave them all open and then just turn the power button off. That's never good. It's what we would call a hard shutdown. Now, your other power options, if you click on the Start menu again, so I'm going to press my Windows key, you'll see at the bottom there it says Power. So if I click on Power, I have Sleep, Shutdown and Restart. So sleep is a good one to use if maybe you're going to sleep at night, maybe you've got a lot of stuff open. You can put your PC into sleep mode, which won't close down everything, but it's going to use very little power. So all you need to do to log back in the morning is touch your keyboard, type in your PIN or your password, and you're up and running again. Now, shutdown is pretty much what it says on the tin. It's going to shut everything on your PC down and turn your PC off. And then finally, restart is probably an option that you've used many times before. There might be occasions where you need to restart your device, such as if you've installed maybe a new application which requires a restart in order for it to be able to work. Then you might want to use that option. And it basically does a shutdown and then automatically restarts your PC and will land you back at the login page where you type in your password or your PIN. So those are the options that you have. Now, there is one more option called Hibernate, but again, I'm going to discuss that more in later modules. But for now, that's a very quick overview of how to get started, how to navigate your way around the Windows 10 desktop. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to our course on Windows 10. In this module, I'm going to talk to you about running apps and desktop programs. So this is one of the most frequent things that you'll do when working in Windows 10. Once you've logged in, you're going to want to start to open your apps and maybe run apps as well. So we're going to go through the basics of that in this particular module. And one of the things that I really want to highlight in this module is the difference between apps and desktop programs. But we're going to start out by taking a further look at that Start menu. I'm going to show you how you can start apps and desktop programs. I'm going to show you a really nice little feature that will help you work in multiple different windows. So we're going to look at snapping apps. And then finally, I'm going to show you how you can easily close any applications that you have open. So let's start out again by taking a look at some more details related to that Start menu. Now, we looked at this in previous modules, and we know that to get to our Start menu, we can either click on that Windows logo in the bottom left-hand corner, or alternatively, we can press the Windows key on our keyboard. Now, when that Start menu pops up, obviously you've got your menu items running down the left-hand side, and then you have those tiles in the middle. And we're going to delve more into tiles and organizing them in later modules. But all I really want to show you here is the fact that you can actually modify the size of this Start menu. So if you're finding this a little bit too big, a bit too cumbersome, then if you hover your mouse over the right-hand side, you can see I get that little double-headed arrow, which means I can simply drag it in to make that a little bit thinner. I can do exactly the same at the top, so if I want to make it shorter, I can just click and drag that down. So that allows me to see a lot more of whatever I've got underneath that, be it an application or just my simple background like I do here. Now I find that a little bit too small, so I'm just going to drag mine up very slightly and also back out again. Now, as we've seen previously, if you want to start up an application, one way of doing it is to scroll through your list of applications, which are all organized alphabetically, and you can click to open. So for example, I can click to open up Excel. Now, another way that I can do this is I could select my applications from this tiles area. Now, I don't have a great deal of stuff in this particular area at the moment. I am going to add to it as we go through the course, but I do have a few things. So for example, if we keep it consistent, if I wanted to open up Excel, I can see that I have my Excel icon underneath this Life at a Glance section. If I click it, it expands that little folder. I can then click on the tile again just to launch Excel. So a couple of really simple ways just to open your applications from that start menu. Now, one thing I want to point out in this menu in particular is if we scroll through, you'll see that most of the items in this list have an icon next to them to help you identify that particular item. But if I scroll down, you'll see that some of them have this little folder icon. So if we look at this one here where it says Microsoft Office Tools, I have a little folder icon. Now, with these folder icons, what you'll also see is that you'll have a little drop down at the side. So if I click to expand that, it's going to show me the items that are located under that particular folder. Now, the reason why I'm highlighting this to you is because sometimes that can be a little bit confusing when you're searching for a particular application. If I give you an example, if I wanted to open up the Notepad application on my PC, if I jump down to N, which is just below, I don't have Notepad in there. Now I know that Notepad is installed, so where might that be lurking? Well, in this case, I happen to know that Notepad is a Windows accessory. So if I scroll down my list and get to my W area, you can see I have a folder here again, Windows Accessories. If I expand that, it's going to show me all of those accessories, and one of them there is Notepad. So what I'm trying to say to you here is if you're looking for a particular application and you can't find it, it might be that it's located in a folder. Now, you're not going to know the name of the folder that it's located in a lot of the time, and of course there is a much easier way to find your applications than going through every single folder. But I'm going to get onto that when we go through all of the options we have related to search. But just be aware, it might be lurking somewhere different to where you think. So we're going to leave this start menu for the time being, and we're going to shift our focus down to that taskbar that we have running across the bottom. Now, as I mentioned before, this is kind of my preferred way of opening up my applications. I like to have all of the applications that I use most frequently pinned to this taskbar. And there's a few reasons why I prefer this method. One of them is that they're super easy to access. So you can see down here, I have very easy access to File Explorer. If I just click, it opens it up. And pretty much all of the applications that I use, I have the Microsoft Office suite, I have a couple of web browsers, and on the end here, I have some applications that are related to the recording of this video. So you might be wondering, how do you get your applications to be pinned down on that taskbar? Well, again, it's pretty simple. We're going to jump back into our start menu, so Windows key. And all you need to do is find the application or the desktop program that you want to pin. And I'm going to use one of the tiles here, actually. I'm going to pin the Microsoft Store. Right-click on the tile or on the menu item, go down to More, and you can see that you have a Pin to Taskbar option. One thing you'll also notice in here is you also have an Unpin from Start option. So if I wanted to remove the store from that start screen, I could choose to unpin it. But for now, I'm going to select Pin to Taskbar. So there we go. If you now glance down at that taskbar, you'll see that I've added the Microsoft Store to the taskbar. Similarly, if I decide at any point that I don't need a particular application pinned to that taskbar, all I would need to do is right-click on it and select Unpin from Taskbar. And it's gone. So whilst this isn't an exercise, I think it would be really good practice for you to go into your Start menu, to find those applications and desktop programs that you use all the time and just practice pinning them down onto your taskbar. Now, if you want at any point to rearrange the order of the icons that you have down there, it's just a simple case of grabbing the icon and dragging it to its new location. So you can see there, I'm dragging File Explorer along, and I'm going to put it there after my web browsers. Now, if I click to open File Explorer, you'll see that some of my icons have a blue line underneath them. So you can see Google Chrome, File Explorer, Excel, and then a couple of the icons towards the end of my taskbar. Now, all that basically means is that that application is running, so it's open somewhere on my PC. You'll see if I open up the Microsoft Edge web browser, as soon as I do that, it gets a blue line underneath it. And if I close that web browser down, I no longer have that blue line there. Now again, what color this line appears in is completely customizable, and we will get onto that when we talk about personalization. Now, another thing that's worth noting is when you do have a few different things open, if you want to switch between your applications, so currently I have File Explorer on top. If I wanted to switch to my browser, all I would need to do would be to click on the browser icon in the taskbar, and it's going to pull that to the front. If I switch back to File Explorer, click again, and it pulls that to the front. So a very easy way to switch between your different applications that you have open. Now, one thing that's really important is understanding the difference between apps and desktop programs. You'll quite often hear them used interchangeably, but they are actually quite different. So an example of a desktop program would be one of the Office applications, so something like Excel or Word or PowerPoint, or even a Windows utility, so something like Notepad like we were looking at earlier. Those would be desktop programs. Whereas apps tend to be something that are a bit more self-contained. So for example, Netflix is an app that I've downloaded. Solitaire is an app that's been downloaded. And the difference between apps and desktop programs is that when you open up an app, it is very much independent from everything else. So the app will have its own menu system. It will have its own way of working with that app. Whereas desktop programs tend to work in a similar way. You'll have the standard Windows menu drop-downs, contextual menus, all of those types of things. So let me just show you an example of an app. I'm going to jump into this Solitaire collection app, and there we go. So we have the app open, and you can see what I mean. It has a menu in the top left-hand corner with its own style of menu system. Now, one thing that you'll notice is a difference with Windows 10, particularly if you've come from Windows 8 or 8.1, is that in those older versions, when you opened up an app, it would open up in full screen mode. So you wouldn't see the taskbar or anything else on the screen aside from that app. Now, that doesn't happen automatically in Windows 10. You can see even though I've got this app open, I can still see my taskbar running across the bottom. However, what you'll find in most of the apps is there will be some way for you to switch that to full screen mode. And I can see in this particular app, in the top corner, I have full screen view, which just gets rid of that taskbar and allows me to work with more space in the particular application. I think these days most of us are used to the concept of apps. We all have mobile phones. We always download apps onto our mobile phones. It works in a very similar way here. I could jump into the Microsoft Store, I can browse through their apps, and I can load apps onto my PC. Now, when we were looking at the taskbar, I was showing you how you can switch between apps simply by clicking on the relevant icon on the taskbar to bring that particular application to the front. Another little feature that you have is this little icon just here, Task View. And if I click that, what that's going to do is it's going to show me everything that I have running on my PC at the moment. So you can see I have a couple of Excel documents open, I have a PowerPoint presentation open, I have my recording software because I'm recording this tutorial, and you can see that I can scroll through and see other items that I had open earlier today, yesterday, and even further back than that. And if I want to switch to them, I can just simply click to pull that into view. So this little task view is a great way of really kind of getting an overview of everything that you have open. Another thing that I like to do in here is I like to come in here to close apps. So if I've got about 20 different things open, sometimes it's a little bit tedious to go through switching to each application and closing things down. If I go into Task View, you can see if I hover over this Book 1 Excel, I get that little cross in the top corner. I can just click it and it closes it. So I can just go through, clicking the cross on each document that I no longer require. And that is actually a lot more efficient than doing it the other way. Now I want to show you something that is a facility that I use all the time. I find myself constantly working in two different parts of the screen. So for example, I might be writing some notes for a training course in Word, and I might also be doing some research on the internet related to that training course, trying to work out what I want to put in the course. So I like to have my internet browser open in one half of the screen and my Word document open in the other half of the screen. And Windows 10 gives us this really nice feature called snapping, which allows us to easily do that. So let me do just that. I'm going to open up Word just by tapping on the icon, and we'll just do a blank document. I'm also going to open up my Microsoft Edge browser. Now, if I want these in each half of the screen, all I need to do is go up to the top of my Edge browser, click on the title bar, that grey bar at the top, and kind of pick up that window. And then I'm going to drag it all the way over to the left-hand side until I see that little ghosting. When I let go, it's going to snap to those ghosted boundaries. And cleverly what it does is it then minimizes all of my other running applications, and I can choose which one I want to display in the other half of the screen. So in this case, I want to display the Word document. So I just select it, and I now have them both organized perfectly in each half of the screen. Now it's also worth noting that you can do this with up to 4 documents. So I could have 4 documents in each corner if I wanted to. Again, what I would do, if I maximize that, if I grab Internet Explorer, and this time instead of dragging it over to the left-hand side, I'm going to drag it more up towards the corner. And you can see I get that little ghosting just there. Let go, and it puts it in the corner. I can then choose what other application I want to show in that half of the screen. So I'm going to say, show my PowerPoint presentation. And then I could do the same with Word. I could pick that up. I could pull it up to the top corner of the screen to snap it in place. And then I could have another application there if I wanted to. Now, I don't tend to like to work like this. I find the windows a bit too small. But if you do have a much bigger screen or a bigger resolution, then you might find that particularly useful. And now this leads me on to my final point in this module, and that is closing down applications. Now I have 3 things open on the screen, and I can simply click the cross to close down Word, click the cross to close down PowerPoint, and I still have my Internet Explorer window open. Another way that I could close this down is if I hover over Microsoft Edge in that taskbar, you can see I get that little window preview. If I move up, I have a little cross in the corner, and I can just click to close that down. Another way that you can shut things down, and if I open up Microsoft Edge again, is if you like using shortcut keys, if you do Control F4, and that will also close your window down. So that's it for this module. Quite a lot to take in. As I said, do have a practice finding those applications that you use frequently and pinning them and organizing them on your taskbar. That's it for now. I will see you in the next module. Hi everyone, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to talk about user accounts. Now, earlier on, I mentioned that you can have multiple different accounts. So you might need to set up one or more account on your PC or laptop so that you can share it amongst other people. So an example I would give there is if you have a PC at home and there's multiple different family members who use that PC, you can have a separate account for each person so that they can log in and have access to all their own customizations and settings. So in this module, we're going to cover the basics of managing accounts. I'm going to start out by going through the user account settings. I'm going to speak to you a little bit more about a Microsoft account versus a local account. I'm going to show you how you can create a new account on your PC. And then I'm going to show you how you can delete user accounts. So on my particular laptop, I have two accounts set up on here. One is for myself and another is for a member of my family. And the two accounts that I have on this PC are set up in two different ways. One of them is a Microsoft account and the other one is just a local account. So I'm logged in as myself currently, and the first thing we're going to do is just take a quick look at my settings. So we're going to go down to our Start menu and we're going to click on the cog icon to jump to our settings. And we're going to jump straight into this accounts section. So as I'm logged in as me, this is where I can see all of my information about my account. So the first thing you can see there is you can see a picture of myself. You can see the email address that I'm using here, and you can see that I'm an administrator. Now, as I said, this is a Microsoft account. So this is the account information that I would use to log into Office 365 or Microsoft 365 as it's known these days. And you can see underneath I have a link to manage my Microsoft account. So this is where I could manage all of my billing information because if you remember, Microsoft 365 is a subscription package. And I can manage all of my settings surrounding my Microsoft account. You can also see here that I am an administrator. So that means that basically I have access to do pretty much anything on this laptop. It's the highest level of access that you can have. And you might want to make multiple people administrators, or you might just want to have one person. That's entirely up to you. But as an administrator, you can do things like add other accounts, delete accounts, things like that. You'll also notice that occasionally, in order to run an application with a high level of privileges, so maybe you want to do something that could, if done wrong, affect the running of your PC, quite often you won't be able to run that unless you're logged in as administrator. Now, a couple of other things we have on this page here. You can see it's telling me that I can sign in with a local account instead if I want to. And then at the bottom, I can choose to change my picture. So I have a camera option here. And I can also browse for a picture if I have one saved off to my local drives. So this all comes under the Your Info tab in Settings. Let's move down to Email and Accounts. So again, at the top here, you can see that I've got my account, which is a Microsoft account. But I also have the option to add an account, and we are going to add an account in a moment. And you can see all the different options that you have. You can set up a Microsoft account, a Google account. You can set up a local account. Lots of different kinds of accounts that you can create. The next option down is Sign In Options. And this really allows you to control how you log into your PC or laptop. And you can see, particularly with some of the newer laptops or PCs that you'll buy, you'll have, now these sign-in options will vary depending on the device that you're using. So I have a very new laptop, so I pretty much have access to all of the different sign-in options. For example, Windows Hello. What Windows Hello allows you to do is instead of typing in a password or a PIN to log into your device, you can essentially use the camera on your laptop, which uses facial recognition to recognize it's you, and then it will log you in. So that's a really cool little feature. Now, one that I have set up on here is the one that I prefer actually, and that is this Windows Hello fingerprint. So again, this may or may not apply to you. It really depends if you have a device that has an inbuilt fingerprint scanner. Now mine does, it's just a little square just underneath my number pad. And basically when I set up fingerprint scanning, it scanned my fingerprint, and now to log in, I can just place my finger on that little square and it will log me straight in. So it's really quick and efficient. It's also highly secure because no two fingerprints are the same. So there's not too much of a chance of anybody else being able to come along, put their finger on the pad and log in to your PC. So aside from those two newer options, which you may or may not have access to on the device that you're using, we have all of the other options as well. So you can choose to sign in with a PIN as opposed to a password. You can sign in with a physical security key. You can have a standard password, or you can even have a picture password as well. So a lot of sign-in options there, and it's really down to you as to personal preference and also what your device is capable of. Now, if I wanted to do something as simple as resetting my password to log into this device, because I'm using a Microsoft account, if I scroll down to the bottom here, you can see that it says changing your Microsoft account password. And that essentially is going to take me through to Office 365 where I'll need to change my password. And that's because I'm using a Microsoft account. You'll see it is a little bit different when you're using a local account that simply resides on this PC. But if you are looking for that option, you can jump to here. It's then going to ask you to open up one of your web browsers, and it's going to take you to some information which will talk you through how to change that password. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these options over here, but I do want to jump across to family and other users. And this is where I want to delve more into that Microsoft versus local account. Now, there's lots of advantages to logging in with a Microsoft account. So, for example, this is the account that I use across all of the Microsoft products. So when I log into my laptop using my Microsoft account and I open up applications like Excel and Word, it's all tied together. It's all logged in under my same Microsoft account, and I have easy access to things like OneDrive, my files, and it's just a very consistent way of working for me. Now, it might be that you don't necessarily want that. Maybe you don't particularly use OneDrive or anything along those lines, and you're happy just to have an account which you log into on the PC so you can surf the web and do various different bits. And that is where you might want to use a local account. Now, I want to show you a common mistake that people make when they're trying to add a new account. They'll come into here, into email and accounts, and you'll see that you have an add account button at the top. Now, this is where you would go if you wanted to add an account that's connected to another application. So if you want to add an account for someone who has a Google account, you can do that from here. If they have an iCloud account, you can do that from here. If they have an Office account, you can do that from here. But what if the person that you want to add, maybe you don't know what their login details are. Maybe you don't know if they have an Office account or a Gmail account. What if you simply just want to set up a new profile, a new account on your laptop without having to type in their email address and password details? That is where you would go down to family and other users. Now, again, if you want to add a family member, you can add a family member up here. And it says, add your family so everybody gets their own sign-in and their own desktop. So essentially people can customize what their desktop looks like. And then it says you can help kids stay safe with appropriate websites, time limits, apps, and games. So if that sounds like an option that would be useful for you, you can add a family member account from there. At the bottom, we have other users, and it says allow people who are not part of your family to sign in with their own accounts, and this won't add them to your family. And you can see there that I set up Ben Lee as a local account. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to log in as Ben so you can see some of the differences that we have. So I've now logged in as Ben, and Ben has a local account, and you can see immediately that it's very much personal to Ben. So he has his own desktop background, completely independent of my account. He has his own desktop icons, and if we jump down into the start menu, you'll see that his tiles look a lot different to mine. He has different tiles available. And if we jump up into settings and go into accounts, you'll see that it says local account underneath there. And it is also worth noting that if you set up a local account, you can switch that to a Microsoft account simply by signing in with a Microsoft account instead. So basically all of his settings are independent to his profile. So I can't then go in and try and access something like OneDrive because I'm not logged in with a Microsoft account. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how to set up a new account. It's a super simple process. We're going to create a local account on this PC. So I'm going to log back in as myself and I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm now logged back in as myself and we're going to run through the process of creating a local account on this machine. And the process is very simple. We're going to go back into the Start menu and we're going to jump into Settings and we're going to go back to Accounts. Now, this is a local account that I want to set up, so I'm going to go to Family and Other Users, and I'm going to select Add Someone Else to this PC. Now, it's going to pop up and automatically ask you for this person's Microsoft information. Now, if you just want to set up a local account, you don't have their email address or anything like that, just click on I don't have this person's sign-in information. And once again, it's going to try and get you to create an account on Microsoft. Now, if you don't want to do that, we just select Add a User without a Microsoft account. And you can now just type in those basic details. So I'm going to add Vicky Matthews. And I'm going to give her a password. And then you'll need to complete 3 security questions in case you forget the password. So I'm going to do that. I'm then going to click Next and I'll see you in a moment. And there we go. It's as simple as that. Vicky Matthews now has a local account on this machine and all I simply need to do is to send her her login details and she can log in to this PC. Now, removing an account is pretty simple as well. So again, if I select Vicky Matthews, you can see I have an option to change account type. So if I wanted to switch her to a Microsoft account, I could do that. Or I can select Remove. It gives you a little warning saying that all of her data and any customizations she's made are going to be deleted. Now, I'm okay with that. I've just added this account. I know I can delete this fairly safely. And there you go, she's gone. So very simple to set up users and delete them. That's it for this module. In the next module, we're going to be doing our first exercise. So please join me for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to explore some of the options that you have with regards to help and support. So we're going to start out by taking a look at the virtual assistant. I'm going to show you the Tips app, and then I'm going to refer you to the Microsoft support page. Now, as a general rule, there is no help as such within Windows 10, at least help in the context of other applications we might have used, such as Excel or Word. But there are a number of facilities available within Windows 10 which can help you out a lot if you're stuck on something or if you're looking for more information about something. Now, something that was really helpful in slightly older versions of Windows 10 than the one I'm currently running is that they had a really useful Get Started app, which contained lots of topics and tutorials and videos. And I found that really helpful, but it seems that that has now been removed and replaced with a couple of other alternatives. So I'm going to click on my Windows key. Now I'm going to scroll down to G, which is where Get Started used to be found, and you'll see that instead we have this Get Help area. And if we click on that, it's basically going to take us into this virtual assistant where we can talk to a virtual agent. Now, programs like this in general are running some kind of artificial intelligence. You may like this kind of thing, you may not. But I would say have a little play around with it, see how you feel about it. You might find that it's something that you rely on quite a lot when it comes to getting help. So for example, I'm going to type a little question in here and see if the virtual agent can answer it. So I'm going to say, create a new account and hit enter. I can see that she's typing away. And she says, which one did you mean? Add or remove an account on Windows 10, create a local account or administrator account, or none of the above. So that's actually pretty helpful. I want to create a local account, let's say, so I can click on that link. And immediately the help page guiding me through how I would do this pops up. I'm going to give her a little bit of feedback. I'm going to say, yes, that did solve my problem. And she's now saying, great, you can ask me another question. So really what this does is it takes your input and it pulls back the relevant help pages. So Virtual Assistant is definitely one to have a little play around with if you're stuck on a particular thing. Now, something else we have in here which might help you out a little bit, if we press the Windows key again And this time I'm going to go to my keypad and I'm going to click on T for Tips. And you'll see that there is actually an app that's called Tips. And if we open that up, you can see that we have lots of different Windows 10 tips. They're divided down into categories so we can see what's new. Something that's very appropriate at the moment is tips on how to work remotely. So let's have a quick look at that. So it's talking me through some tips to collaborate and save into OneDrive or save my files to the cloud. And I can scroll through these different tips. So those can be quite useful as well. And you can scroll through and there's lots and lots of different categories that we have in here. And here we have getting started with Windows 10. So again, we have 9 useful tips. So these are worth having a little scroll through, particularly if you're very new to Windows 10. And even from within this app, you have a little magnifying glass in the top, which will allow you to search. So let's say create a theme. There we go. And I've got some tips relating to my search item. Now, if you think that's going to be super useful and you want to either pin this to your taskbar or your start menu, remember, if you just right click in the taskbar, you have a pin to taskbar option. Similarly, if you wanted to pin that to your start menu, which I'm actually going to do, let's jump down to tips again by clicking on T. I'm going to right click. And you can see here I have an option, Pin to Start. And there it is, just there, set up as a new tile. So you've got Virtual Assistant and you have the Tips app to help you. Now the final resource I'm going to show you is probably the one that I use most often. And that is simply just jumping on to the Microsoft support site. And you can see the URL at the top there, support.microsoft.com. And this is a wealth of information. Their library is enormous and pretty much anything you need to do or anything you need help with, you can find in here. So you can use this search bar at the top and anything you type in here will search through every help topic. So if I was to type something reasonably generic like tables, that could mean I want to create a table in Excel, I might want to create a table in Word, I might want to create a table in Outlook. It's going to search across all of those. And if you want to be a little bit more specific, you can go into the individual application before typing in your search term. So I'm going to say more Microsoft products, and I'm going to select Windows 10 because that's what I need help with. And helpfully at the top here it says select your products. So we've got Windows 10, but if you are an Windows 8.1 user or 7, then you still have some help files available to you. And again, these help files are all divided down into categories. So internet and storage I'm currently in. I've got some tips to improve my PC performance, and then I have all of my individual categories at the bottom there. So again, it really depends exactly what it is that I'm looking for help on. But this is a wealth of information, this website, and something I would definitely have bookmarked in your browser so that you can quickly jump there and access the wealth of information. Now at the top here, we have this menu running across. So if I click on what's new, this is a nice area because it's going to show me everything that's been updated in Windows 10 recently. So Windows 10 is always being updated, and it's good to sort of keep on top of those changes so you can really get on board with anything new that's released. And another tab that I find quite good in here is this Community tab. So this essentially takes you through into the Microsoft Community Forum, and there is a huge community of Microsoft users. A lot of the time, if I have a question that's quite tricky, it's always worth jumping onto the community forum, posting it, and guaranteed somebody's going to come up with something that's either going to help you out, fix your problem, or just give you a lot more information than you knew prior to making the post. You can scroll through the topics, you can click on them to read, and you can make a post if you need to. So that is it. So whilst there isn't a dedicated help app within Windows 10, you do have numerous features between the Virtual Assistant, the Tips app, and that Microsoft support page. That should be enough to help you out with any questions that you have when it comes to working with Windows 10. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone, welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to be taking a look at Windows updates. So I'm going to start out by running you through some of the basics of updating Windows. We're then going to look at some of the advanced options that you have. And then finally, we're going to take a look at how you can keep all your apps updated. But first, let's start out with those Windows update basics. Now, your Windows 10 system will update automatically, but you do have some options and also some control. So let's jump down to our Start menu, and we're going to head straight for Settings. And right at the bottom, the last option in the list is Update and Security. And this is where you'll find all of your Windows updates. So you can see this first page that I get to here, it's telling me all of the updates that are currently available for my PC, and you can see that they're all showing as pending install. And I have quite a few here in my list. Now, the way that this works is that all of these updates will automatically install. So if I do nothing, these updates are going to install themselves. And you can see right at the bottom there, it says will automatically install updates when you aren't using your device, or you can install them now if you want. So if I want to just get them out the way, maybe I've got a spare hour where I'm not doing so much, or maybe I'm going to a meeting and I want to get those updates installed, I can just click the Install Now button to install all of them now. Otherwise, Windows is going to select a time when I'm not using my device in order to install those for me. Now, you do have some other options underneath, which gives you a little bit of control as to when these updates are installed. So if you wanted to, you could pause your updates for 7 days. So again, maybe if you are working on some kind of project, or maybe doing something like I'm doing here, a Windows course, maybe I want to make sure that my system doesn't change too dramatically whilst I'm writing this course, so I might want to pause any updates for 7 days. And you can see here it says visit advanced options to change that pause period. So maybe you want to pause it for longer than that. You can do that from this advanced options area at the bottom there. You can also change your active hours. So a lot of the time, the download and install of updates is invisible to you. So you don't get any indication on the screen that updates are actually being installed in the background. But sometimes once updates have been installed, a restart is needed. And sometimes that's not particularly convenient, particularly if you're in the middle of your working day and you can't really afford to restart your PC and maybe wait 10 to 15 minutes in order for all of those updates to finish installing. So in order to ensure that your updates are installed when you're not using your device, you can change your active hours. So what you can do is you can set your active hours to let Windows know when you typically use this device. So if you're particularly busy between 9 and 5, then you can change your active hours to that time period and Windows won't install updates during that time. So you can see here mine is set from 8 till 5 and I have a little change link there if I need to change that. If I want to look at updates that I've installed previously, I can view my update history. And you also have an option to uninstall updates. So maybe you've noticed that an update that was installed yesterday is causing some problems with your system. You can essentially uninstall that update and roll your system back. And then finally at the bottom, we have advanced options. Now in here we have a few other options. So at the top there, it says receive updates for other Microsoft products when you update Windows. Now I like to have this turned on because it's really important to me to make sure all of my other applications such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook are all kept up to date constantly. So I like to receive any updates for those applications when Windows is being updated as well. So I have that option toggled on. Now I'm not going to go through all of the options that we have in here, but one I will highlight is this restart this device as soon as possible when a restart is required to install an update. Now, as I was saying, sometimes when updates occur, the system will restart, and then after that restart, there might be a number of things that Windows has to do to make that system usable. So your system can be out of action for a little while. Now, again, if you want to have some kind of control as to when that happens, so maybe you don't want it to happen in the middle of the day when you're super busy and you don't have the time to wait for those updates, I would leave this option toggled off because you don't want it to restart the device as soon as possible. So definitely check those advanced options as well when it comes to how you're managing your updates. Now, when it comes to updating any apps that you have on your PC, and again, those of us that use mobile phones that have apps on them, we're probably fairly used to that process of updating our apps, and it works in a very similar way in Windows. So I'm going to jump across to the Microsoft Store, and if you want to see if any of your apps need updating, if you click on the three dots in the top right hand corner, the top option you have there is Downloads and Updates, and this is going to do a quick check of all your applications, and it's going to see if any of them require an update. And you can see there at the top I have 3 apps that have updates available. And it's a very simple process of just clicking the Update All button in order to update those. And if you want to check for any updates, you have the Get Updates button at the top there, and that will just essentially do a refresh. And if anything new needs to be updated, it's going to be added to that list at the top. And you can see there, as I've clicked that button, we have one of them automatically downloading, and then the others require me to manually install them. Now, another thing to check up here is if we click on those 3 dots again, let's jump into Settings for our Microsoft Store, because there are some features in here which also relate to updates. You can see the top one there, Update Apps Automatically. I have that turned on, and you just saw one of those apps that updates automatically. So I have Update Apps Automatically turned on, and I do recommend that you do have that turned on because that's just going to make everything a lot more efficient. And I also have Show Products on Tile turned on. Now, we haven't really spoken too much about live tiles, so let's just talk about that for one moment. I'm going to click the cross to come out of here, and I'm going to go back to my tiles. Now, I don't have this turned on too many of my tiles, but one thing that I do have turned on is on the weather tile. This is showing live updates. So you can see that tile is kind of moving, it's refreshing, and so is that news tile. So this is what we call live tiles. And if you don't like that, some people find it quite distracting, you can right click, go to More and say Turn Live Tile Off. So that's pretty much it when it comes to how you can manage and handle your updates. The key takeaway here is that Windows updates will automatically install, but it's very important that you go in and you check your settings to make sure that they're installing at a time that's convenient for you. And when it comes to app updates, again, as long as you have that setting turned on, those apps will update automatically. Alternatively, you can just click the button to install them manually from the Downloads and Updates section in the Windows Store. Fairly straightforward. Thanks for listening, guys. I will see you in the next module. Hi guys, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to talk a little bit more about working in desktop mode. Now, apps run in desktop mode, and for many people, desktop mode is the mode used most of the time unless you're utilizing a tablet device. And just a recap of something we learned earlier, if you click all the way down in the bottom right-hand corner and click on the Action Center, if you need to switch into tablet mode, you have the option to do so from here. So it's a very quick toggle on, toggle off. So in this module, I'm going to give you an overview of the Windows 10 desktop. We're going to take a look at managing your desktop icons. I'm going to show you something called Peek and Show. And I'm going to show you how you can utilize multiple desktops. So let's start out by reviewing some of the options that we have on the Windows 10 desktop. Now, as we've mentioned before, if we look at the taskbar at the bottom, we can see any applications that we currently have running based on the fact that they have a blue line underneath them. And whichever one we have open on top, that one is referred to as the active task. Now, a couple of other things that we haven't mentioned yet so far, again, down here in that notifications area, you'll see that we have this little keyboard icon, and this is the touch keyboard. So obviously, if you don't have a touch-enabled device, you can actually still use this by clicking on the number pad using your mouse, but this is primarily designed for people who have touch screens or some kind of touch device. You can type things using your finger. Now, your desktop may look a bit different to mine. The aspect ratio might be different. So for example, I'm using a wide screen. You might also have a different background image to me, and of course you can personalize this to your own tastes, and we're going to talk a lot more about how you can really personalize it, set up the images you want to use, the themes, the colors, all of those kinds of things in later modules. Now, when it comes to managing our desktop icons, if you recall, again, we spoke about these very briefly in a previous module. I don't tend to have too many icons on my desktop. I don't really like a really busy looking desktop. I prefer to pin all my most frequently used applications to the taskbar. However, I do have 3 icons up there. I have my recycle bin because I find that quite useful to be able to jump to really quickly. I have my Microsoft Edge browser, and I also have a link to Camtasia, which is the app I use to record these videos. Now, the only reason that I have Microsoft Edge and Camtasia on my desktop is because I've recently downloaded those, and Windows automatically creates that desktop shortcut for me. So in reality, what I would probably do is come in and delete those shortcuts because I already have those applications pinned to my taskbar. But for demonstration purposes in this module, I'm going to leave them just there. I will say though that despite my preference for adding things to the taskbar, if you look at mine, you can see my taskbar is pretty much full up. If I wanted to start adding other icons, it's going to start getting a little bit busy looking. There is a lot more space on your desktop, so it might be that you want to move some of those shortcuts onto the desktop if you find yourself running out of room on that taskbar. Now let's take a look at some of the customizations you can do for these desktop shortcuts. And that's all they are. You can see that they have a little arrow on them. Basically means it's just a way of pointing you to the location where this particular application is stored. And the reason why that is important is because sometimes people think that if you delete a shortcut from this desktop, it deletes the entire application. Don't worry, it doesn't. It simply deletes that shortcut link. So let's take a look at some of the other things that we can do to customize these icons in our desktop. So I'm going to right click my mouse anywhere on that empty desktop, and you'll see the top option there is view. So this lets me customize how large I have those icons. So at the moment I have them as medium. If I wanted to do them as large, you can see they're extremely big, a bit too big there, or you have small in there as well. So again, entirely up to you how you want to have the sizing on those icons. I like mine at medium. So let's right click again, and we have a sort by option. So this allows you to arrange your desktop icons in a more logical sequence. So it might be that you want to arrange them by name or size or item type or the date that they were modified. So the most recently installed or used would be at the top. Now you can also rearrange them yourself, so just by clicking and dragging these icons, it might be that I decide I want them running horizontally across the screen as opposed to vertically down the screen. I can simply use my mouse to click and drag, and if you're using a touch device, you would use your finger to do the same thing. Now the icons that you see in Windows 10 in general are standard Windows icons. And they're the same for everybody. So everybody will have the same icon for File Explorer. Everybody will have the same icon for Recycle Bin by default. But you can actually change these icons if you want to. So again, if we right click on our desktop background and jump down to the Personalize area, and this is an area we're going to be in and out of throughout the preceding sections. Now I want you to jump down to the Themes section. And we're going to ignore all of this at the moment and go right down to the bottom where it says this little link here, Desktop Icon Settings. Now these desktop icons with the checkboxes next to them, these are like your standard Windows desktop icons. And you can see that I only have one of them checked because I'm only showing the recycle bin on my desktop. I don't have my computer or network or control panel or anything like that. But if you wanted to, you could tick these if you wanted to see more of them. So again, if I click on Computer and click on OK, and just move this window out the way, you can see I now have that desktop icon that's been created, which jumps me straight to this PC in File Explorer. So let's jump back into that link, and I'm going to untick Computer because I don't want that on there. Now another thing you have in here is if you do want to change the icon for any of these, maybe you want something else for your recycle bin, you do have the option to select it and then you have change icon. And it will take you into this little array of icons that Windows provides, and you can change that to something that you like a little bit better. So just be aware that you can turn on and turn off those Windows standard icons to add them to your desktop, and you can also change that icon if you want to. Now, a lot of applications, when you install them, will have their own assigned icon. So I'm in File Explorer at the moment, and you can see here that I have access to my OneDrive cloud storage, and that comes with its own little blue cloud icon. Now, if I wanted to make OneDrive a shortcut on my desktop, all I need to do is right-click, go down to Send To, and one of the options I have there is Desktop Create Shortcut. So if I select that, you can now see that that's added that to my desktop. Another way that you can add items as a desktop shortcut icon is if we go into the Start menu, and let me grab something like, let's just grab this calculator. You can click, drag, and drop, and that will very quickly create a little link for you as well. And if you want to remove any of these, it's a simple process of right-clicking. You have the delete option in there, and as I mentioned before, it doesn't delete the application, it just deletes that shortcut. So a good little exercise for you now is just to practice adding and removing items to and from your desktop. Now, another really useful feature of Windows 10 is the peek feature. And you've probably seen a little sneak preview of this as we've been going through the course so far. So if you have several applications open and you want to access something on your desktop, but you can't see the desktop, so currently I have Microsoft Edge web browser taking up the entire screen. I can't see anything else other than that. If I wanted to jump to an Excel spreadsheet that I have open, instead of going through and minimizing down each window I have open to try and find what I'm looking for, a real quick way of doing it is to hover over the icon, so in this case Excel, and it's going to give me a little preview of all of the Excel spreadsheets that I currently have open. And you can see I have 3 of them open. If I want to switch to one in particular, I can just hover my mouse over it and click to select. And that essentially pulls it to the front. So this is a really nice feature. I use this all the time when I'm working with lots of different open documents in order to be able to move about efficiently. Now, another option I want to speak to you about is using multiple desktops. So it might be that you have lots of different applications open. You can see here I've got a few different Excel windows open, and I want to arrange them in a certain way. Now, if we jump down to the taskbar and we need to right click on the taskbar, there is an option in here to cascade windows. And that kind of arranges them in a slightly better way. So if I want to pull one to the front, I can click on the bar and that will bring that one to the front. Now, I will say this isn't an option that I use particularly frequently. I don't find it the most efficient way of working, but some people really like it. So just remember that you have access to it in that right-click menu in the taskbar. Now, if you're someone who really does work with lots and lots of different apps and constantly has lots of things open, so much so that your desktop is really getting full up, it's hard to switch between applications because you have so many things open, an option that you might want to explore is creating a second desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back down to my taskbar, and you'll see that we have an icon there, which is just to the left of my Google Chrome, and that is Task View. We did go into this earlier. But if I click it, it shows me all of my open applications in a way that's easy for me to see all in one go. Now, one thing that you may not have noticed in this window is right at the top, we have an option for New Desktop. So if I click New Desktop, it allows me to have a second desktop, and you can see I can switch between them. So Desktop 1 contains all of the applications I currently have open, and I can now have a completely different desktop which has nothing running. So essentially, this is almost like having 2 different computers. So if you find that you're running out of space on one desktop, don't forget you have the option to create another one, and you can open up as many applications as you like. Switching between them, again, is just a simple case of going to Task View and switching between your different desktops. If you decide you no longer need one, if you hover over, in this case Desktop 2, you have that little cross to get rid of that desktop. So again, a really nice way of managing your windows if you're someone who has loads and loads of things open at any given time. All right, everyone, that is all we have on working in desktop mode for this module. In the next module, we're going to be taking a little bit more of a look at managing and using the taskbar, so please join me for that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our course on Windows 10. We're still down in section 3, and in this module, we're going to be talking about how to manage and use the taskbar. So we're going to start out by walking through the taskbar contents. I'm then going to show you some options that you have within taskbar settings. We're going to look at taskbar toolbars. And finally, we're going to look at taskbar contents. So let's start out by taking a look at our taskbar contents. Now, this is something that we've touched on in previous modules. We're going to go into a little bit more depth in this module and look at some of the features that we haven't yet discussed. So firstly, let's move down over to the left-hand side of the taskbar. And you can see that we have a box there that says type here to search. So this is your search bar. If you're looking for anything on your PC, you can come in here, you can type your search term, and it's going to go away and find it. So that might be an application, that might be an app, that might be even a setting. So this is essentially a universal search that searches for your keyword across everything on your PC. And that also includes things like files and documents as well. Now we have a whole section dedicated to searching, so I'm just going to leave that there for now. Now, just to the left of that, where you can see that little circle, this is Cortana. So Cortana would be something similar to Siri if you have an Apple mobile phone, or even something like Amazon's Alexa device. It uses speech recognition, so you can talk to Cortana, you can ask her questions, and you can get her to deliver the answer to you. And again, we're going to do a demo of this in a later module. But just so you know, if you want to start up Cortana and ask her a question, that is the button that you can click on in order to do that. And it's worth noting at this stage, if you don't happen to see that Cortana button there, if you right-click on your taskbar, you can see that you have an option there, Show Cortana Button. So if you don't have that ticked, then you're not going to see it. So just make sure that you have a little tick next to that option. Now, we've already talked about our taskbar icons in quite a lot of detail. So I'm going to move straight across again to this notifications area. So my notifications area is kind of full at the moment. And if I click this little up arrow, it's going to show me all of the little icons that there isn't space for in my notifications area. So don't forget, in that up arrow, you'll have other little icons in there as well. Now, one thing you can do to give yourself a little bit more space in this taskbar area is if you right-click your mouse, you can see there's an option there that I currently have ticked, and that says Lock the Taskbar. So it locks it into its position, the position that it's in now, and it doesn't let me make it any bigger or any smaller. Now, if you turn this off, so let's just uncheck that option, what that means is I can now grab this taskbar, and you can see I get that double-headed arrow. I can drag it up, and it gives me more room on my taskbar. So if I then wanted to click the up arrow, I could drag one of my little notifications that hasn't had enough room to go on that notifications area, and I could drag it and drop it down onto my taskbar. Similarly, if I want to remove something, I can drag and I can drop it back to where it was. Now, if you have a wider taskbar, that also gives you more room to place your taskbar icons. So again, if you're somebody who doesn't like having them split between the taskbar and the desktop, you might choose to do this, have a slightly bigger taskbar, and put more of your applications on it. Now, this isn't something that I particularly like to do. I like to be able to see the greatest amount of my screen, so I tend to keep my taskbar locked. Now, as you can probably imagine, with these notification icons, you can drag them about in order to rearrange them. So if I want to move my OneDrive, I can just click and drag that icon and it moves it around. So you can rearrange those icons, set them up how you want. Now, other options that you have with regards to the taskbar, if we right-click on the taskbar again, you can see at the top here we have certain items checked. So we just came in here and I told you about checking that Cortana button. But you also have the option to hide or show the task view button, which is this little icon down here, which allows us to get an overview of all the applications we're running and also create multiple desktops if we want to. If you find you never use that option, that might be something that you don't want to show to give yourself a bit more room on that taskbar. Now, I also have Show Touch Keyboard button showing, and another cool little one is Show Touchpad button. So if I click that, you can see I now get this little touchpad, and this essentially mimics a mouse if you're using a touch device. So you can see there you have your mouse area. So you can see there you have your mouse buttons, and you can utilize that in a very similar way. Now, I don't particularly need that, so I'm just going to turn that off. So the other important option in here to know about is taskbar settings. So this is where you can really come in and modify exactly how that taskbar is managed. So you can see, again, we have lock the taskbar. I have that turned on, and these are all little toggle sliders, so it makes it very easy to enable or disable certain elements of your taskbar. I could choose to automatically hide the taskbar completely in desktop mode, so if I was to turn that on, you can see my taskbar has now disappeared. Now, I don't particularly like this option. I always like to see my taskbar in general, but if you don't, you can turn that on. I'm going to turn mine back off. And if you use a tablet device, you have the same option there as well. You have an option of using small taskbar buttons. So if I turn that on, you can see they then become very tiny. Now, this is another really great way. If you like to have lots and lots of things pinned to that taskbar, that gives you a lot more space. And I'm going to turn mine off. Now, that peek feature that we spoke about earlier, if you remember when you hover over, it gives you a little preview of whatever you have open for that particular application. If you don't like that for some reason, and some people do not, you can choose to turn that off just here as well. Now, a couple of other options I want to highlight in here, this taskbar location. So by default, your taskbar is going to be across the bottom of your screen. And for 99.9% of people, this is adequate. It's very, very rare that I see somebody who has their taskbar located somewhere else. But you do have some options. I could place it at the top of my screen, which puts it up there. Now, that looks incredibly strange to me because I have been using it with the taskbar at the bottom for years and years. You could also choose to put it on the left or the right of the screen. Now, as I said, I prefer it on the bottom, but it's very much personal preference. Now, something else that you have is this combine taskbar buttons, and I have mine set to always hide labels. Now, if I was to change this to never, just look down in the taskbar what happens when I select this option. Now, I've got quite a lot on there, so this option is a little bit pointless, but if you did have less apps pinned to your taskbar, it's going to show you the name of that application next to it as well. So again, that might be something that you find particularly useful if you find it quite difficult distinguishing between the different applications purely based on the icon. So I like to say always hide labels. So a few options in there for you to definitely check out and customize. Now, another option you have in here is this Show Desktop option. Now, this is particularly useful, again, if you have a lot of things open on your screen and you want to quickly just jump back to your plain old desktop. Then clicking this icon will minimize everything that you have open and just show you your desktop. Now, there is also a keyboard shortcut for this as well, and that is Windows key D. That will take you back to your desktop and minimize everything down into your taskbar whenever you press that option. Now, also staying on that theme, if we right click and go up to toolbars right at the top, you have an option here for desktop as well, which works slightly differently to the one we've just looked at. So if I click desktop, you'll see now in the taskbar, I get this little desktop option, and there's two little arrows moving off to the right-hand side. Now, if I click that, it essentially allows me to navigate around my desktop. So if I want to select a file from OneDrive, I can select OneDrive, I can go to Documents, and it's going to show me all of my folders. So I can go through, and essentially it's like working in File Explorer, but from your taskbar. So that might be another little option that you quite like to have down on your taskbar. Now again, I don't particularly like this option, so I'm going to jump back in and I'm just going to turn off that desktop feature. Now the final thing I want to talk to you about in taskbar settings is if we right click and jump back into taskbar settings, let's scroll down to this little notifications area. So here we can select which icons appear on the taskbar, or we can turn system icons on or off. So let's go into select which icons appear. And you can see here, this is where we can customize what icons we actually see down in this notifications area. And again, these are just slider toggles. So you can see the ones that I have turned on. So I can see my microphone, I can see my Wi-Fi network, I can see my OneDrive, my power and my volume, and then I have many of these turned off because they're not of particular interest to me. I don't need to see them all the time. So definitely go in there and review what you can see on that taskbar notifications area. So that is it in relation to the taskbar and that notifications area. Have a little practice with that, play around, modify the things that you can see in that notifications area and really get it set up so that you're seeing the information that is important to you. In the next module, we're going to talk about using that search box and also Cortana. So please join me for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to explore how to utilize the search box and also Cortana. And both of these are kind of used for similar purposes. So first, we're going to look at how you can utilize the search box to basically find anything on your PC, be it a file, an application, an app, a desktop program, or maybe even something on the web. And then I'm going to show you how you can utilize Cortana, which is going to allow you to search using your voice. So first up, let's look at the search box. Now the search box is located down in that taskbar area over on the left-hand side. And it's very obvious. It says type here to search. And this is a universal search, meaning that it's going to search through everything on your laptop and also the web, depending on your search term. So if I click in the search box and I start to type what I'm looking for, so let's say that I'm looking for the Paint application. I'm going to type in P, and you'll see as I start typing, Windows is already running a search. So now it's showing me the most relevant items related to the letter P. And the first thing I have there is power and sleep settings. Now, obviously, the more that you type the word, the more accurate it gets. So if I type in the entire word paint, you can see that the best match is the Paint app, and then I also have some other apps there, Paint 3D. Now I can refine my search a little bit more. You can see just above, currently, the blue underline is underneath where it says all. So that's literally searching everything for the keyword paint. However, if I'm only interested in searching for an app called Paint, I could select apps. What about if I have a document that contains the word paint? I can search for it that way. Or alternatively, I can click on the web just to see any web results for the word paint. And then I have more options at the side here. I can search through email folders, my music library, contacts, photos, all things like that. Now for the moment, I'm going to stick with all. And once it's found your item, you can just click on it to open up that particular application. Now you can also use the search box if you're looking for a particular file. So if I type in sales, for example, you can see the best match there is the sales 2017 Excel file that I have there. And then I have some search results from the web related to my search term, and then some more documents listed underneath. Now I can also use the search box to search for websites. So if I type in Wikipedia, you can see there, best match Wikipedia. I can select it and it's going to jump me straight to the search results, and Wikipedia is the top one up there. I can also search for folders. So if I'm looking for a particular folder within File Explorer, I can type that in and you can see there the best match is my course files folder. So a really powerful, really nice universal search. And I will say that if I'm looking for something on my PC, I always use the search bar as opposed to coming into the start menu and scrolling through looking for whatever it is that I want to look for. Even if I'm looking for a particular setting. So for example, if I wanted to know how to adjust the brightness on my PC, I would type in adjust brightness. And you can see their best match, ease of access, brightness setting, and it's going to jump me straight to that particular item within settings. So I find this super useful. Now let's get on to speaking a little bit about Cortana, because Cortana is pretty exciting. As I mentioned before, she's very similar to something like Siri, if you're used to using Siri on your mobile phone, and also very similar to something like the Amazon Alexa device. So Cortana is there as kind of a virtual assistant activated by your voice, and she's there to help you find things on your PC, search things on the web, and also answer any questions that you have. Now, if you've never used Cortana before, it's definitely worth jumping onto the Microsoft site and looking for Cortana. So you can see there the URL is just microsoft.com/Cortana. Where you'll have a really useful video which will walk you through some of the main elements of using Cortana. So let's just take a moment to review this video. Now, one important thing when it comes to utilizing Cortana is that she needs to be able to understand your voice. So it's very important that you do speak clearly. And I will say that Cortana does improve the more you use it. Now, I will say that you also kind of need to know how to structure and ask your questions so that she can understand you and provide you with the best results. And this does take a little bit of practice, but as long as you keep your sentences fairly simple and you speak them clearly, then you should find that she's quite useful to you. Now, there are a few settings when it comes to Cortana that are worth reviewing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize the search bar at the bottom and I'm going to type in Cortana. And you can see my top option there is Cortana permissions, which is going to jump me into my settings for Cortana. Now I'm going to go to this talk to Cortana option. Now a couple of things I want to point out in here. Now when you're utilizing Cortana, you can just say your question and she will reply to you. However, you can set it so that Cortana responds to Hey Cortana. And if you set this, it says Cortana will always respond to Hey Cortana even when your device is asleep. And it's also worth mentioning that Cortana uses more battery life when this is on because she's essentially always listening for the words Hey Cortana. So my personal preference is to have this turned off. You can also invoke Cortana by using a keyboard shortcut, which is the Windows logo key plus C. And you can choose if you want Cortana to be able to listen to you even when your device is locked. Now, I actually have that turned on because sometimes I might be away from my PC and I might need to ask a question. So I like to just be able to say my question without unlocking my entire machine. Now, when it comes to setting up your language, it says here, Cortana works best when the language you select here matches the region on your device. And it says at the moment, Cortana is using English United Kingdom, but if you wanted to change that, you can choose a different one. Now, if you want some tips about how to structure questions, how to chat with Cortana, there is a link at the bottom here, which is going to take you through to a web page, which will give you some useful tips when it comes to interacting with Cortana. Now, probably the most important option here is right at the top. It's your microphone. You want to make sure that Cortana can hear you. So it is worth just testing out Cortana to make sure that she can hear you. Now, currently I have an external microphone plugged into this device so I can record this video, but otherwise I would have that unplugged and it would just be utilizing the microphone that's built into my laptop. So if you find that when you start up Cortana and nothing happens, it might be that you have a problem with your microphone. And at that point, it's worth going into this check the microphone link and going through this little wizard to try and work out any of the issues that you're having with your microphone. But 9 times out of 10, I will say that Cortana works straight off the bat, straight after your install of Windows, as it's just utilizing the microphone that's built into your device. Now, for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm actually going to turn on this option here for Hey Cortana, and then I'll turn it off and show you how it works the other way. So let's turn that on. I'm going to click Close. And if I want to bring up or invoke Cortana, all I need to say is, Hey Cortana, what's the weather like in London today?
The forecast in London, England shows partly sunny skies with a high of 27 and a low of 15 degrees. Right now, it is sunny and 26.
So very quickly, she's pulled up that weather forecast for London for me. Now, if I close her down just by clicking on the cross, and I'm actually going to jump back into those Cortana settings for one moment. And I'm going to turn off that Hey Cortana option and close it down. So now if I say the word Hey Cortana, she's not going to pop up. In order to invoke Cortana, I would need to click on the Cortana button that's to the right of my search box. And I can utilize Cortana for things like setting alarms. So let's see how we would do that. So I'm going to click on Cortana. Set alarm for 2:59 p.m. And there we go. You can see immediately that's popped up with the alarm. I can also use Cortana to search for things on the web. So let's invoke Cortana again. Who won the X Factor in 2012? And there we go. She's pulled back that result for me. And Cortana is pretty unrestricted in what it can look for. It can search the web, it can search for things on your PC and provide you with lots of really useful information. She can also do things like play songs. Now, Windows 10 has its own song library and it's called Groove Music. Now, I'm going to click in the search bar here and search for Groove Music. And this is somewhere you can store all of your MP4s, your music files. Now, I don't actually have mine stored in Groove Music. I have my music library elsewhere. But if you had MP4s and songs listed in here, you could also utilize Cortana in order to play those songs from your music library. So lots of really good uses for Cortana there. Just make sure that you check your settings, make sure she recognizes your voice and your microphone is picking up your voice. Speak clearly and simply, and you should find no problems. That's it for this module. In the next module, we're going to do exercise 2, so please join me for that. Hi everyone, and welcome back to our course on Windows 10. In this very quick module, we're just going to finish off talking about notifications and the Action Center because there are still a few important points that we haven't talked about yet. So we're going to start out just by going through your notifications settings, and then I'm going to show you how you can customize what you see in your Action Center. Now, there are numerous different ways to getting to your notification settings, but as we've just been utilizing the search bar in previous modules, I'm going to use that. So I'm going to click down in my search bar and I'm going to type in notifications. And you can see the best match option there is notifications and actions setting, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Now, quick actions at the top, we're going to come back to that a bit later. For now, I want to focus on notifications. Now, if you're somebody who likes to be notified visually when something happens. So for example, if an alarm goes off, you might like to have a little pop-up banner in the corner of your screen, or if you receive a new email, maybe you want to see that as well. This is where you can customize which apps can send you notifications. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like notifications at all, you don't like those little pop-up banners, then you have a little slider option here to turn off all of your notifications. Now, in general, I keep this on, except if I'm doing something like a webinar, or maybe I'm in a meeting and sharing my desktop. I really don't want other people to see pop-ups of emails that I've got coming in. So that might be when I would toggle this option off. You also have some other options underneath with regards to your notifications. So if you want them to be displayed on the lock screen, then put a check in that box. And I don't know if you remember right at the beginning of the course when we were looking at that lock screen, I actually have this option turned on and it was showing me that I had 3 unread emails. You can also do things like show reminders and incoming calls on the lock screen. And if you want your notifications to play sounds, then make sure you have a tick in that box. So all of these are very much personal preference, but go in, review them, and turn on the ones that you're interested in. Now you can also specify which applications you receive notifications from, and I find this particularly useful because there are some things that I like to be notified about and other things that I don't. So I'm not particularly that interested in having a pop-up banner when I receive a new email. So I can come in here and I can turn that off. So that means that if I am in something like a webinar where I'm sharing my desktop, I can still see other notifications, but I'm not going to get any of my personal emails coming in and showing on the screen. Now the rest of these, again, these are personal preference, but I'm going to leave the rest of these on. And what I'm actually going to do, just to show you that notification pop-up, is I'm quickly going to set an alarm. So we can utilize our search again down here, and I'm going to type in alarm, and it takes me to alarms and clock. So you can already see how useful that search bar is for quickly finding things on your PC. Now I'm going to set an alarm for about 1 minute's time. So what time are we at? 3:22. So let's say 3:24 p.m., which is in about a minute's time. I'm going to click save at the bottom. And when that alarm activates in 1 minute, you will see a notification pop up in the corner of my screen. And there you go. There is my alarm. So jump in here and customize what you want to see. Now, the other thing that I want to talk to you about, which is in here, is if we scroll right back to the top, I want to talk to you about these quick actions. And it says here you can add, remove, or rearrange your quick actions directly in the Action Center. So quick actions relate to the Action Center. So let's pull up the Action Center again. And we're talking about these little tiles. So if you remember, the Action Center is a quick way just to turn off or turn on different modes or settings. So for example, if I want to switch to tablet mode, I have my little quick action button there in order to do that. Now, of course, you can customize what you see in here and make it relevant to what you use. And you would do that by clicking on this link here, edit your quick actions. So now you can see that I can go in and I can make changes to what I'm seeing in here. So if I want to move things around or rearrange them, I can pick up and I can drag and reposition. I can also click on this little pin icon in the corner, and that's going to remove that quick action. So it's a good idea to go through these and just remove any that you don't think you're going to use. So I'm going to remove flight mode as well. Let's remove project. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with those. Now, if I wanted to re-add any of those quick actions, if I click the add button, you can see there they still are. I can click them to add them back in. So essentially you have a standard set of quick actions that you can add or remove from this area. And once you're happy with your layout, click on done and you're all set to go. That's it for this module on notifications and actions. In the next module, we're going to be taking a look at using windows and dialog boxes, so please join me for that. Hello everyone and welcome back to our course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to be taking a look at using windows and dialogues. Now, if you've used an earlier version of Windows, then this is one of those sections that you can probably give a miss. Because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the ribbon interface. And if you haven't used Windows before, then this section is very important. So we're going to be looking at the general use of windows and dialogues, and we're going to be using a couple of applications. So I'm going to start out by running you through the features of Windows. We're going to move into moving and resizing windows. We're going to talk about dialogues, menus, and finally the ribbon. So first, let's start out by taking a look at some of the features that are integral to Windows. And to do that, I'm going to open an application, and I'm going to open the Notepad application. So I'm going to use my search box at the bottom. I'm going to type in Notepad. I can see there it is at the top. Click to open. Now, Notepad is essentially a very simple little window which just allows you to type in any notes that you have very quickly and easily. And you can save these files, and they save as .txt files, and they can then be used for you to just open and read if you want to, or you can import that information into another application such as Excel. And this is one of the standard applications that will come with Windows. So if you have Windows, you're going to have the Notepad app. Now, if we delve back into the history of Microsoft, going all the way back to the 80s, we had this concept of Windows right from the very start, which of course is how it got its name. And Windows give a consistent way of interacting with your PC. Now, I will say that with the advent of some of these universal apps that we can download from the Microsoft Store, this consistency has gone because, as I mentioned before, within these apps, they have their own menu systems and their own way of working. But you'll find with any of the Windows native apps, they generally follow the same kind of rules, guidelines, layouts, so on and so forth. So let's take a look at this window. In the top right hand corner, we have these three little buttons just here. So if I hover my mouse over this first one, this one is minimize. If I click it, it just minimizes that particular application down into my taskbar. And you can see there the app is still open. I just need to click in order to restore that application. The next button along that I have is the maximize button. So currently I'm working in a reasonably small window. If I wanted to make this full screen, if I just click that button, it's going to make it full screen. You can then see that that icon changes. So it says to me, restore down, which is going to put it back to how it was originally. And then the final button we have there is the close button. So if I want to close this window, I can just click that cross and you can see it's gone. It's also no longer displaying as open in my taskbar. Now, if you are operating within a window, you might find that that window may have many panes or panels. Now, this one in particular doesn't, but we will look at some examples of that a bit later on. But what you will find is that all windows have a title bar. And the title bar is used for a few things. First of all, it tells me what I'm working on. So you can see here, it currently says Untitled, and then it says Notepad, which is the application I'm using. Now, if I was to go in and say File, Save As, I can then choose to name this as something else. And you can see there at the bottom, it says File Name. And I'm just going to click in the front here, and I'm going to name this My First File. It's telling me it's going to name it as a .txt, which is the default file format for Notepad files. If I click Save, you'll see that that title bar has now changed to My First File.txt. And because I saved that to my desktop, you can now see it's also there on the desktop, giving me easy access when I need to open this. Now, when it comes to moving and resizing windows, that's also very easy. If I want to move this window around, again, all I need to do is click on that title bar area and drag it around. And you can see I can pretty much place that wherever I like. Remember that if you go too far over to the left or to the right, that snap-in feature in Windows comes into play, which when I let go is going to snap it, and I can fill the screen with another application that I have open if I choose to. I can also resize this window simply by dragging those boundary lines. So if I hover over the right hand side, you'll see I get that double-headed arrow. I can drag it in. I can do the same on the bottom. I can drag it up. I can even drag diagonally. So when I hover my mouse right over the corner until I get that diagonal double-headed arrow, that's going to allow me to freely drag that to the size that I want. What you'll also notice is that most windows will have some kind of scroll bar. Now you can see that I don't have anything in this document at the moment that requires me to scroll down, so I have no scroll bar there essentially. But if I was to press return a few times, you can see now that scroll bar becomes active and I can scroll up and down my document, and you'll find that is fairly standard across all of your Windows applications. So let's move on to talking about dialogues. Now, dialogues are a special kind of window. So let me show you an example of a dialog box. Now I'm going to go up to File here and I'm going to say Open. And what I have here now is a dialog box. And what this means is that whilst I'm using or working within this dialog box, I can't really do anything else in Notepad. If I try and move this dialog box out the way and try to type something or even click in this window, it's not going to let me because I have a dialog box open. And a dialog box allows me to perform a specific action. So in this case, it's allowing me to open any file that I have saved off. Now I'm just going to navigate this course files folder and I'm going to open notepadtest.txt. You can see this now has opened. I've got the name in the title bar up there, and you can see I just have some test text in that file. So I can now carry on typing in this particular file if I want to, but if I'm finished with this file, if I jump up to File and click Exit, that's going to close my Notepad file, but it's also going to close the entire application. Now, if I want to open a file, and I'm going to click File and Open again, it might be that the file I want to open isn't listed in here. So by default, I'm not essentially being pointed to the correct folder. And you can see just above, you can see which folders I'm in. So I'm in the Online Courses folder, Windows 10, Course Files. And then underneath it's showing me all of the files that are contained within that folder. So it might be that if this is the incorrect folder, I need to navigate to the correct folder. So I just do that by scrolling up and selecting the location where that file is stored. So I'm going to go back to my desktop where I have my first file.txt. Now another thing I can do from within here, and I'm going to make this window slightly bigger just by dragging it out, is if I want to see a preview of that file before I open it. So maybe I'm not sure if this is the correct file and I need to see the contents. I have this little option just here that says Show Preview Pane. Now this file doesn't have anything in it whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click to open it, and I'm just going to type some text into here. I'm going to say File and Save. And now if I go back to File and Open, click on my file, you can now see in the preview pane, it's displaying the contents of that file. So the preview pane is a really useful little feature to turn on. Now it might be, now I've started working in this file, that I want to make some changes to this, but I want to make those changes in a different file. So I can say File, Save As, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this My First File V2 for version 2. Click on Save. You can now see that that title has changed in the title bar. I can carry on adding information into this file. I can say File, Save, but essentially if I go to File and Open, I now have two files. So if I open my first file.txt, you can see there is my original version. And of course, if I wanted just a blank Notepad file, again, I can go up to the File menu, select new, and it's going to give me a new file. And it's worth noting that with Notepad, everything opens within one window. So if I wanted a new file in a new window, I can say new window, and I get a second window. And of course, to close these down, just click on the cross to close them down. So I've reopened that second version of my Notepad file, just so I can highlight to you some other options that you have that are very Windows specific. So we have our menu bar running across the top: File, Edit, Format, View, and Help. And as you've seen, when we click, we get a drop-down menu with various different options that we can utilize within this window. So we've seen a few of these at the top here, but we also have things like page setup. We can choose to print this particular file, and we also have the option to exit. Now, the edit menu, I'm not going to go through all of these, but one thing I do want to point out is that you'll see that some of the options within here are slightly grayed out. Now, when you come across a grayed out menu option, it means it's not accessible, so it's not available for me to use. And if you're wondering why, well, if you look at it this way, if I want to select copy, I can't at the moment. And the reason why I can't do that is because I haven't got any text highlighted. So Windows doesn't know what I want to copy. And the same thing there would apply to the cut option. So let me highlight this first line of text just by clicking and dragging. Now if I go to the edit menu, you'll see that both cut and copy are available for me to select because I now have some text highlighted. If I select cut, it's going to remove it. I can then jump down to the bottom of my document, go to edit and say paste to paste that piece of text in. Now it's also worth noting that these menu options that you get in your window will very much depend on which app you are in. And I will say menu options have changed so much over the years. Now, if you've been using Microsoft applications for quite a while, you'll probably remember that about 8 or 9 years ago, we went through a huge change where all of the drop-down menu systems were replaced with ribbons. Now, if you've never heard of ribbons, don't worry, we're going to come on to that in a while. But prior to that ribbon structure across applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, we had menu drop-downs very much like you see here. So you can see here that some of the Windows applications still retain those menu drop-downs, where some of them have adopted that ribbon structure. Now, just to give you an idea what I mean when I'm talking about ribbons, and we are going to get onto this and cover this in a lot more detail a bit later on, but I've just opened up Excel to show you an example of the new ribbon structure. So you can see here that we have our menu headings running across the top: File, Home, Insert, Draw, so on and so forth. But when I click on them, I don't get a drop-down menu like I do in Notepad. I get these ribbons that run horizontally across the screen, which contain lots of different icons with all of the different commands. And this was a huge change. I remember I was part of the rollout of this new system across different companies, and it was very difficult trying to get people to switch from drop-down menus to this ribbon structure. But we're 8 or 9 years down the line now, so hopefully everybody's kind of got used to it. And again, if this is the first time that you're seeing these ribbons, we're going to talk about them in much more detail a bit later on. So the main thing I'm really trying to highlight here is to just be aware that you have two options when working within Windows apps: the menu system drop-downs and also the ribbons. That's it for this module. In the next module, we're going to be talking more about the Start menu, so please join me for that. Hello everyone, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to be delving a little bit more into the Start menu. Now, we've already looked at many different aspects of the Start menu, but we're going to start to get more into some of the personalization features that you have. So we're going to start out with an overview of the Start menu. And I'm going to show you how you can navigate the Start menu. And then we're going to look briefly at the Start menu in tablet mode. Now, if you're used to using Windows 8 or 8.1, then this Start menu is going to look a little bit unfamiliar to you. Microsoft changed the way that you access your programs in Windows 10. And it now has this kind of hybrid system where we have menu items and also a tile-based system. And as I mentioned before, this is kind of a compromise. In Windows 8 and 8.1, it was all tiles and no menu system. People didn't like that so much, so now in Windows 10 we have kind of a compromise, a hybrid between the two. Now, as I've mentioned before, the left-hand part is the traditional start menu like in Windows 7, and the one on the right is the tile-based system, and both of these are very customizable. So we can make the start menu bigger by dragging it up or dragging it down. We can drag it out to the left or back in again, depending on how we want that to look. And what you'll see here with these tiles is that I currently don't have mine organized particularly well. I've got kind of a big gap in here and they're just not organized in any logical order. Now I can completely customize how these tiles are placed, how they look. I can change the grouping names at the top, so where we have Life at a Glance and Explore, I can add my own ones. I can add whatever tiles I find most useful to this section, and I can also rearrange the tiles. Now, if I'm someone who particularly likes this tile-based system, you can essentially change your Windows 10 back to how it used to look in something like Windows 8. So if I right-click my mouse on the desktop and go down to Personalize, I'm going to select Start from this menu, and I can switch on this option, Use Start Full Screen. If I click to turn that on and close this down, now if I bring up my Start menu, you can see I have the full screen and it's just those tiles. Now if I want to get back to just my desktop, if I click the Windows logo again, that's going to give me back my desktop. Now I'm going to right click and jump back down into Personalize. I'm going to go to Start, and I don't particularly like that option, so I'm going to turn it back off. Now you can see here there are lots of ways that I can personalize my Start menu. So for example, you could jump into colors just here, and you could change the colors that are used on that Start menu. So if I click on this drop down, I have a choice between dark or light. So if I click on dark, you can see that that makes quite a dramatic change. Now I also have a light option in there as well. You can have transparency effects turned on or off. So I have mine on. So if you look down at my taskbar currently, it's slightly transparent. Now I could turn that off and make that more of a solid fill. I can choose my accent color. So again, if I switch this to dark, this is going to show up a little bit more. But my accent color is the color of things like these lines which are appearing underneath my open applications. So currently I have that set to this seafoam color, but you'll see if I select red, then that's going to change the color of those little accents. So again, entirely up to you which colors you use. So it's definitely worth jumping into settings and just taking a look at some of the options that you have to customize or personalize that Start menu, and also take a look at some of the colors that you have when it comes to changing your accent color and background color. Now, as I said, we are going to go more into this when we cover personalization in a later module. Now, when it comes to the Start menu and navigating around the Start menu, we have that menu on the left, and as we've seen before, if we click on any of these letter dividers, it's going to take us into that keypad. And I'm just going to click on M. And what you'll see is that I have this little scroll bar, which kind of doesn't appear until I hover over it. But that's going to allow me to scroll up and down through my menu items. Obviously, if you're using a touch device, then you would use your finger to scroll up and down as opposed to using the mouse. Now, as we're talking about a touch device, I just want to take a little look at the Start menu in tablet mode. So I'm going to go to my Action Center and I'm going to turn on tablet mode. And this is what tablet mode looks like. So I'm now going to use my finger as opposed to my mouse to navigate through some of these options. Now, if I was to click these three lines in the top left-hand corner, you can see that I can switch between any tiles that I've got pinned, or I can go to All Apps, which is going to give me that list of my apps. And to scroll, I just use my finger and drag up. I can click on any of these folders with my finger, and I can open my applications such as Notepad again in a very simple way. And I can close it back down again, and it takes me back to that centralized Start menu. Now, one thing you'll notice in tablet view is that it does make everything slightly bigger to accommodate for your finger, because your finger is a lot larger than the pointer of a mouse. So if we just take a look at a little bit of tile management in tablet mode, if I press and hold on this first tile here, the office tile, you can see I get a couple of little options. The bottom one, the 3 dots, allows me to access more options for this particular tile. So again, it really depends what I want to do. But you'll see I also get the option just above of tapping on that little drawing pin icon. Now currently, this application is pinned to my start menu, which is why I can see it here. So if I tap this, it's going to unpin it and essentially remove it. So now when I'm in my pinned tiles, I can't see it. Now if I want to repin that, I can click on my 3 lines in the top left-hand corner. I can go to All Apps. I'm going to use my finger to scroll through. I'm going to find that Office app, and again, if I press and hold, I get my option to pin to start. Now if I go back to my pinned tiles, you can see that my Office icon has now been added. And if I want to move that back to its original location, I just press and hold, and then I can just simply drag with my finger and drop. Tap anywhere else to deactivate those options. So very, very simple to work in tablet mode. Now, one other thing you might want to do in here is turn off live tiles. So we mentioned live tiles earlier, and the live tiles are the ones that you can see that are kind of moving. They're showing updates. So for example, my news app in that middle explore group is kind of scrolling different news items, and you'll see that my weather app next to it also scrolls and changes occasionally. And this is what we call live tiles. Now, if I didn't want that, what I can do is tap and hold on the weather app, tap on more options, go to more, and say turn live tile off. And you can see now it's just showing that it's not showing me constant updates of the weather. So that's a very quick run through of some more options that you have related to the start menu when working in desktop or in tablet mode. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this very quick module, I just want to show you the difference between user settings and control panel. Now, both of these are mechanisms to adjust your settings. So I'm going to start out just by talking to you about the differences between settings versus control panel. I'll show you a little bit how you can navigate around the control panel, and then we'll take a look at user settings. Now, traditionally, and in earlier versions of Windows, the control panel was where you went for most of your settings on your device. So, for example, if you wanted to add a printer or set up your Wi-Fi network, it's control panel that you would go to. However, in recent versions, and particularly in Windows 10, a lot of those things that were available in control panel have now been moved across to settings. Now, this is a little bit confusing because there are some things that are within settings and some things that are still in control panel. And for many items, there's an overlap. So you'll find them both in control panel and in settings. So all I really want to do in this module is make you aware that you have both of them and how you can access them. So let's start out with control panel. Now, as I said, if you're not good at remembering where things are and where to click, typing in the search box is always a good option. And this tends to be where I go when I'm looking for something on my PC. So I'm going to click down here in the search box and I'm going to type in control panel. Best match at the top there, control panel app. Click to open. And this is my control panel. So you can see here it says adjust your computer settings. Then we have numerous different groups with various different clickable links underneath. So if I want to review my computer status, I can jump into here and take a look at the security and the maintenance information. If I click back to go back, I can look at my network status so I can see what Wi-Fi I'm connected to. And I can come in here to set up a new connection or network if I need to. I can jump into hardware and sound if I want to do something like view the connected devices or add a printer. I can uninstall an application from here or a program. I can change account type. I can do things like access or make changes to the appearance of my desktop and personalization. I can change the clocks, so I can change the date, the time or number formats, and I can also adjust some ease of access settings as well. Now in older versions of Windows, there used to be so much more in this control panel, but as I said, a lot of it has now been moved across to settings in Windows 10. So let's just compare both of them. I'm going to jump back down to search at the bottom and I'm going to type in settings. I'm going to click to open. Now I want to be able to see both of these, so what I'm going to do is use that snapping in Windows 10 and just drag settings over to the right and then fill the rest of the screen with the control panel. So now we have this Windows settings screen and you'll probably see immediately that there is quite a lot of overlap. For example, we have personalization in settings and we also have appearance and personalization in control panel. We have devices in Windows settings and we have our hardware and sound section over here. So just to show you how different it actually is, if I wanted to add a printer, if I click on View Devices and Printers and then Add a Printer, it's going to take me to this kind of old style dialog box. Now in Windows 10, if I want to add a printer, if I click on Devices, you can see I get this menu system running down the left-hand side. One of them is printers and scanners, and I click on the plus to add a printer or a scanner. So you can see how different settings looks to control panel. Settings is a lot more modern in its look and feel. Now when it comes to working in control panel, you do have some control over the way that these icons look. So for example, if I click this little More Options drop down, I can choose the size of the icons that are being displayed. Whereas in settings, I don't have any such options. But personally, my preference is to use settings wherever possible, just because I find it a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit simpler and easier to understand. So the point I'm trying to make here is if you're looking for a particular setting on your PC and you come into settings and you can't find it, it's definitely worth jumping into control panel and seeing if it's in there. Because as I said, there are some things still that are only available in control panel and not in settings. Hopefully that helps you understand the difference between the two. In the next module, we're going to explore this idea of settings even more, and I'm going to show you how you can make some basic changes. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to explore some of the basic settings that you need to be aware of. And there are a few that you should probably be checking right away. So I'm going to start out by talking you through some of the settings that you have for date and time. We're going to look at your language settings, region settings, mouse settings, and finally your pen and touch settings. So let's kick this off by taking a look at date and time. Now I'm going to jump straight back into my settings. So as we saw in the previous module, if we click in our search box and type in settings, we can select to open that up, and I'm going to make that full screen so it's easier to see. And from here, I'm going to jump straight into this middle option, time and language. Now in here, the top option there, set the time automatically. You can decide if you want to set the time automatically or not. So if you don't, you can turn that toggle off. Now, the way that your system knows which time to set it to is that it accesses a time server. So in order for it to be able to do that accurately, you need to make sure you are connected to the internet if you want to use that option. Now, by default, the time is set automatically, but you can also elect to have your time zone set automatically as well. So if I toggle this on, you can see underneath it's picked up my time zone of UTC plus 0 hours, which is the correct time zone for Dublin, Edinburgh, Lisbon, and London, where I'm located. Now, you don't have to have the system set these automatically for you. So if I turn off time zone and also turn off set the time automatically, it gives me this option where I can set the date and time manually. So if I click on change, I can now go in and make my manual changes to that if I want to. Now I'm very happy with my system setting my time automatically for me, so I'm going to toggle that switch on. Now another useful option that you have in here is the ability to add clocks for different time zones. So if you look in the top right hand corner underneath this related settings area, you'll see we have a link there, add clocks for different time zones. So I can select to show this clock, which is my current location, and I can enter display name. So I might want to change that to London, which is where I'm located. And I can also choose to show another clock and select a different time zone. So I might have lots of clients located on the east coast of the US. So I might want to have another clock set to Eastern Time, US and Canada. And I'm going to say US for that one and click on apply and OK. So now when I click on my time and date in the bottom right hand corner down on that taskbar, you can see as I hover over, it's telling me what the local time is, what the time is in London, and what the time is on the US East Coast. And if I click on that, you can see at the top there I have London and I also have the US. So that can be really useful if you work across different time zones. Now if I scroll down, you can see at the bottom here we also have the option to adjust for daylight saving time automatically. Now in the UK we observe daylight saving, so I like to have that option turned on, but obviously you can adjust that. If you don't observe daylight saving, then you would turn that to off. Now if we move down to the next option, which is region, just come in here and make sure that you have the correct region selected, and also regional format. So how do you want dates displayed? So a good example is that in the UK, we write the short format of the date in a different way to the US. So in the US, the month is first, followed by the day, and then the year. Whereas in the UK, it's the day, then the month, then the year. Now you'll notice that I have mine set to English United States. And again, if you look down in my taskbar at the format of my date, you can see that that is US format. So we have month first, then day, then year. Now I have mine set to that because a lot of the work I do is for US clients, so I would rather myself be slightly confused than all of my customers. But I would just come in here and make sure that you set your region so that it gives you the correct date format based on where you're located. Now let's jump down into language. And this is where you can specify what language is used for your display. So again, I'm in the UK, so I have mine set to English United Kingdom. But if I wanted to change my display language, I would need to click on this link, add a Windows display language in the Microsoft Store. And you can see if I click that link, it takes me through to the Microsoft Store where I can choose to install what they call a local experience pack. So it says get Windows to speak your language by installing a local experience pack. And you can go through and you can select your language pack essentially so that Windows displays in your chosen language. And then right at the bottom there we have preferred languages, and you can see I have two set here, English United States and English United Kingdom. Again, I tend to switch between the two depending on who the client is that I'm working with at the time, and most of my clients are based either in the UK or in the US. Now you may not want to have to, you may just be using your laptop at home, and if you speak English or French or German or whatever language you speak, you'll want that to be your default language. So make sure that you click add a preferred language, go through and add that in if your system hasn't picked it up already. And then finally at the bottom we have speech. And here it says choose the primary language you speak, manage voices for your device and apps, and set up your microphone. So I'm recording on a microphone right now. I am speaking English, so I want to make sure that my setting in there is set correctly. And if I'm someone who uses speech recognition, I want to make sure that my microphone is set up correctly, and I can do that from here simply by clicking on that Get Started button. Now, if you're somebody who possibly has accessibility issues, so maybe you don't see so well, you can choose to get Windows to speak back to you, essentially, to kind of talk you through what you're doing. And you can come in here and you can choose a voice. So we have Microsoft George, David, Susan, so on and so forth. So you can come in here, you can choose a voice that you want Windows to use, you can choose the voice speed, and then you can preview the voice as well. So this area is definitely an area of settings that I would come into to make sure that everything is set up correctly. Now, a couple of other things that I want to highlight within Windows settings that I recommend you check before you really get going with Windows is your mouse settings. So I'm going to jump into devices, and you'll see in the menu on the left-hand side, we have an option for mouse. Now, there's only a few options in here, and they are fairly basic. So if you do use a mouse, you want to make sure that you select your primary button. Now, I'm right-handed, so my primary button is my left click. But if you are left-handed, you might want to switch that round if you have a left-handed mouse. You can also adjust the speed in which your mouse wheel is used to scroll. So if you do have a mouse that has a wheel on it, you can use that wheel to scroll up and down pages. And this is where you can specify exactly how far that will jump as you scroll. So you can choose multiple lines at a time or one screen at a time. And you can get even more granular with that and choose how many lines to scroll each time just by adjusting this slider. Now, you do have a few other mouse settings that you can customize, but to access them, you'll need to jump across to this related settings area. And you'll see here you have two options: adjust mouse and cursor size and additional mouse options. Now, what you'll notice is that if we jump into additional mouse options, it actually takes you through to control panel. And this is what I mean by there is such a crossover. Some things are available within settings and other things not. So whilst we have a few of the basic mouse settings available within settings, if we want to do anything a little bit more advanced, it's going to take us through to the control panel. So in here, and I'm not going to go through all of these options, but you can really kind of set up how your mouse configuration is and how it works for you. You can even do things like specify the type of pointers that you're using. So you'll see as I hover my mouse over the screen, I just have this little arrow as my mouse pointer, but I can come in and I can customize some of these if I want to. I also have a pointer options section in there with lots of different settings I might want to look at. I can customize how my wheel operates, which is similar to what we have just here. And then I have some hardware options as well. So the main point here is that if you're looking for additional options, always look over at this related settings area within settings. So our additional mouse options went through to control panel, but if I click on adjust mouse and cursor size, you'll see that that stays within settings, but these options are located in the ease of access area. So it's jumped me straight to those. So if you do have vision problems or any accessibility issues, you can come in here and do things like change the size of the pointer and also make the cursor easier to see when typing. So again, really important for you to come in here and check those settings. Now, the final couple of things I'm going to bring to your attention in here is if we jump to touchpad. Again, this is if you're using a laptop that has a touchpad, you can set how Windows responds when you're using that touchpad. For example, you can use the touchpad and you can double tap it to open files and things like that. And you can make some adjustments to how that responds from this little tap section down there. You can also customize how you want to scroll and zoom. So if you want to drag two fingers in order to scroll. So if I do this on my touchpad, you can see I'm just using two fingers to scroll up and down on that touchpad. I'm not using my mouse. And a bit further down, you can really kind of start to customize the gestures that you're using on your touchpad. And again, this is all very much personal preference. I tend to not use my touchpad as much. I mostly have a mouse connected. But there are some instances where I do use the touchpad predominantly, and if that applies to you, then you're going to want to come in here and check those settings. Now finally, if you are using a tablet device and you have a pen, then you're probably going to want to jump into Pen and Windows Ink settings. And here you can say which hand you prefer to write with. So for me, that is my right hand. And in here you have lots of different options that you can customize for how that pen is going to work when you're using it with your tablet device. So again, if this applies to you, definitely come in here, go through those settings and check to make sure they're set up as you like. So that's it for this module. All I really wanted to highlight there are some of those basic settings in Windows 10 that it's really important that you go into before you really start using Windows 10. They're the basics that you need to make sure are set up correctly so you can work efficiently. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to delve a bit more into display settings. Now, most aspects of display settings are handled automatically by Windows 10, but sometimes you may need to change some things. So we're going to take a look at your display settings. We're going to discuss screen resolutions. I'm going to show you how you can manage multiple displays, and I'm going to show you how you can make some text larger. So let's start out by taking a look at our display settings. Now, the easiest way to get to your display settings is to right-click on your desktop, and right at the bottom there, you have an option for display settings. So starting at the top, this is where we can come to adjust the brightness and the color of our display. So if you find that your display is either a little bit too bright for your eyes or possibly a little bit too dark, you can just move this slider up and down to make it brighter or darker. You'll also notice that you have a night light option underneath. Now, if I turn this on, what you'll see is it says that this night light is off until 8:59 p.m. So that's basically the time that it's going to get a bit darker outside. And if I have this night light setting turned on, it makes my display slightly warmer. So it's not so harsh on my eyes when it's dark outside and I'm looking at a bright screen. So again, definitely play around with that setting and see if that's something that you like. Now, moving down these settings, you can see here that we have a scale and layout section. So this is where you can change the size of text, apps, and other items. Now, in general, when it comes to the scale just here, mine's set to 125%, and you can see in brackets it says recommended. Now, I always tend to go with the recommended setting in here, but just to show you what it looks like, if I was to click this drop down and change the scale to 100%, you'll see that everything gets slightly smaller. So all of my icons on my taskbar are now smaller, and so is the text. And I actually find that a little bit too small for my eyes, so I like to keep it on the recommended setting of 125%. Again, when it comes to display resolution, I always go for the recommended setting for my device. So my recommended is 1920 by 1080. But you do have lots and lots of other options in there. So again, it really does depend on the device that you're using. And I can also choose the orientation of my display. Now, I like to have mine on landscape. If I flip it to portrait, you can see that switches my entire screen around. Now, obviously, that's not great for me at the moment. So I'm going to revert back. Now, I have seen some situations where people have desktop PCs where they can actually turn their monitor so it's in a portrait position. So if you work in that way, then changing the display orientation might be what you need to do in here. And then finally at the bottom, we have a section for multiple displays. Now I'm using a laptop here. I have one display, one screen that I'm looking at. However, I have in the past, and I know many people work with two monitors. So if I wanted to, I could plug a second monitor into my laptop and have two displays. Now you can see that when I click detect here, it tells me that it didn't detect another display because I don't currently have a second monitor plugged in. However, if I did, I'd be able to see both of those monitors listed under here, and I can choose how I want to display across those monitors. So for example, if I want what I'm seeing here extended across both, I can do that. If I want to duplicate across the monitors, so if I want what I'm seeing on this screen now to be exactly duplicated on the second monitor, I can do that as well. Now, if we look over on the right-hand side, you can see we have a few other little links just here. So this sleep better area, this refers to this night light setting. And you can see it says night light can help you get to sleep by displaying warmer colours at night. Now, one thing we didn't jump into was these night light settings. So my night light is set automatically to come on when it gets dark outside. But if I wanted to, I could turn that night light on now by clicking this Turn On Now button. And what you'll see is that the screen gets slightly warmer in colour, which means that if you sleep in the same room as your laptop and you have your laptop open, it's a bit of a less harsh light. And also it is a lot easier on your eyes when the conditions outside are dark. Now underneath here you'll see you have different links which are going to take you to a web browser which will just give you a little bit more information about setting up multiple monitors, also how you can adjust the font size, change your screen brightness and fix any screen flickering as well. Now when it comes to the size of the text that you're seeing on your display, you can make some adjustments to some of the text in Windows 10. And it's worth noting that this applies to desktop applications and not any of the universal apps that you may have downloaded. So in order to demo this, I've opened up Notepad again, and I just want you to look at that title bar and just make a note of the size. Now, if I want to change the size of the text, the easiest thing for me to do is jump down to my search bar at the bottom, and I'm going to say, make text bigger. And you can see at the top there, it's telling me make text size bigger is in System Settings. And it's actually in the Ease of Access area. Now, I'm going to minimize this window down a little bit so we can still see our notepad underneath. And what I can do is I can drag this little slider in order to make the text size bigger. I'm going to click on Apply. And you can see now that that title bar in Notepad is a lot bigger. If I adjust it again just to make it very dramatic and click on Apply, you can see how much bigger it's making that text. And it also is making the text underneath my desktop icons bigger and easier to see as well. But you'll notice that it doesn't make any of the taskbar icons or anything in that taskbar bigger, just desktop items and just these window menu systems. Now for me, that's a little bit too large, so I'm going to take that all the way back down, click on Apply, and everything's now set back to normal. So again, a number of different options in there related to setting up your display so that it suits you and the way you work. Definitely jump in there and go through those and change those settings accordingly. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. We're down in section 4. And in this module, we're going to take a look at our power options and power saving settings. So it's really important if you're using a battery powered device like a laptop, it's really essential that you understand that you can extend the life of a laptop battery by using its power carefully. And an example of that would be switching off or reducing the brightness of your display. So in this module, I'm going to go through with you the options you have for power saving. We're going to talk a bit about power buttons. I'm going to show you power plans and also how you can access your advanced power settings. So let's start out with our options for power saving. Now, as I said, screen brightness will greatly affect the use of power. Even if your laptop is plugged in, it's still going to use electricity. So one way to reduce power is to adjust the brightness of your screen. Now I'm going to jump down to search and I'm going to type in the word power. Now you can see here it's brought up Best Match PowerPoint, which is probably the most obvious thing. It's an application I use all the time, but I don't want that. If I go down a little bit to settings, this is what I'm looking for, power and sleep settings. And I'm going to maximize that window. Now it's worth noting that we're going to get on to talking about something called a power plan. You can essentially set up a power plan and personalize or customize the options for each power setting. Now any changes we make in this screen just here aren't related to any kind of power plan. These are separate from that. But if you don't have a power plan set up on your laptop or your PC, and you just want to make some minor changes, you can come into here. So you can see here, power and sleep, the first thing we're discussing is screen. So it says on battery power, so when my laptop isn't plugged in essentially, turn the laptop off after, and then you can select how many minutes. So currently I have mine set to 4 minutes. And then I have the option that when my laptop is plugged in, it's going to turn itself off after 10 minutes. So if I leave the room or go to bed and I forget to turn my laptop off, it's automatically going to turn itself off after 10 minutes if I have it plugged in. And again, we have similar options for sleep. So if you remember, that sleep option means that your PC doesn't shut down completely. So if you have all of your applications open, it's not going to close them all down. The PC will just essentially go to sleep and work in a really low power mode. And all it means is that if you want to wake up your PC again, you just have to come back to your PC, press the space bar or wiggle your mouse around, log back in, and all of the applications will still be open in the background. So here I have my sleep settings. Again, on battery power, PC goes to sleep after 4 minutes. When plugged in, after 10 minutes. So come in here and adjust these settings accordingly. And finally at the bottom, I have an option here, network connection. So it says when my PC is asleep and on battery power, disconnect from the network. Now, I don't like to do that. I like to have mine always connected to my Wi-Fi, so it's super quick for me to just get up and running with what I want to do. But again, that's personal preference. If you want to disconnect it from the network when it goes to sleep, then feel free to change that setting. Now, if we look over on the right-hand side, you can see we have a related settings option just here, and we have a link to additional power settings. So let's jump into here and see what we have. Now you can see here, this is one of those options which jumps me to control panel. So my advanced power settings are not available in settings in Windows 10. They have to be accessed through control panel. And I have a few different options that I can change in here. So let's start at the top, choose what the power buttons do. So when we say power button, we're talking about basically the button you press to turn your PC or your laptop on or off. Now in here, this is where I can specify what happens when I press my power button. And a good portion of this really depends on the features of your device. And you can see here there's some settings related to the power button and also to the sleep button. Now I have a power button, but I don't have a sleep button. And you can see that I've chosen this option here that when I press that power button, if my laptop's on battery, it goes to sleep. If it's plugged in, it goes to sleep. And also if I was to close the lid on my laptop, it also goes into sleep mode, whether I'm on battery power or plugged in. Now it is worth noting that you can change these. So for example, I might want to say that when I close the lid of my laptop, I want it to completely shut down. So I could select that if I wanted to, or I have the options of hibernate or do nothing. Now an option in here that we haven't really talked about too much is hibernate. And hibernate is important because unlike sleep, which still uses some power, this one doesn't, but it doesn't shut down either. So essentially what happens is your device stores its current state, and if it's hibernated, it will start more quickly than from cold. So if you use a laptop and you want to start it up very quickly, you might choose to hibernate rather than sleep. So I'm actually going to set this to hibernate on both of these for when I close the lid. And I'm going to say Save Changes. Now let's move down to this option here, creating a power plan. You can essentially create your own power plans in Windows 10. So I'm going to show you how you can go through and just create a very simple power plan. So you can see here it says start with an existing plan and give it a name. Now power plans again are very much based on your device. So some devices allow you to create a balanced power plan, a power saver and a high performance power plan. Now my default in Windows 10 is balanced. And you can see here it says balanced, automatically balanced performance with energy consumption on capable hardware. So if I wanted to create a power plan, I could choose a name for my plan. So I'm going to call it Deb's Plan. I'm going to click on Next. So this is basically where I can define my power settings, my options, and implement my own power plan. So here it says turn off display after 4 minutes on battery and 10 minutes when plugged in. put the computer to sleep after 4 minutes and 10 minutes. Now I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click on Create. And you can see here I now have 2 different power plans. So the first one is balanced, which is one of the defaults. Now notice that I don't have any other options for my power plan. As I said, some people have power saver and high performance. They have 3 power plans available within Windows 10. I only have one, so that's the only one I'm seeing down here. I now have the plan that I've just added. It's currently selected, and if I click on Change Plan Settings, I can come in here and modify these 2 if I want to, and I can also change Advanced Power Settings. Now in here you'll see that it says select the power plan you want to customize, then choose settings that reflect how you want your computer to manage power. So I have only 2 options up here. I have balanced, which is one of the default ones, and I have my plan, which is currently the active plan. And I can come into here and I can make further customizations to my power plan. So for example, if I expand power buttons and lid, I can carry on expanding and I can change any of these options just by clicking and selecting something from the drop-down menu. I can expand display, and I can also expand battery, and I can choose what notifications I want to receive as well. So lots of different options for you to customize. Now I will say you don't have to use your own power plan. A lot of the time the one that's installed, in my case balanced, will be sufficient. But if you're really conscious about how much power, how much energy you're using, it is worth maybe thinking about customizing your own power plan. Now the final option I want to show you in here is again in settings, and we're going to jump down to battery. Now it's worth noting that you can also get to this page very simply by clicking on the battery icon in the taskbar. So as I said, I'm using a laptop, it's currently plugged in, and I can see that I am fully charged 100%, but if I click on battery and go to battery settings, it's going to jump me to the same page. So this is quite useful if you want to see which apps are affecting your battery life. You have a little link to do that. And I'm going to change this time period to 1 week. And what it's going to show me is which apps I've been using which are affecting my battery life most. And you can see here by far Google Chrome is the application which is draining my battery more than anything else that I use. So that can be quite useful information to see. Also, if you scroll down, you can extend your battery life by limiting background activity and push notifications when your device is low on battery power. Now, I have this setting turned on, so it automatically activates. So it says turn battery saver on automatically if my battery falls below, and then I've selected 20%. And also, I've got it to lower the screen brightness while in battery saver. So I basically have my system set up so that it's constantly adjusting settings for me in order to get the most out of my battery life. So definitely jump into your power and sleep settings and your battery settings and review those. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. In this module, we're going to take a look at the ease of access options. And really, ease of access just means making your computer easier to use. So we're going to start out by taking a look at the Ease of Access Center. I'm going to show you some options that you do have when it comes to making your computer easier for you to use. I'm going to go through some helpful recommendations, and then we're going to take a look at a couple of examples of ease of access settings. We're going to look at the magnifier and also speech recognition. So first of all, let's jump into the Ease of Access Center. Now, Ease of Access is one of those options that's available in both the Control Panel and also Settings. Now, within this Ease of Access Options area, you're going to find lots of different things that you can change, which are really going to help you work in Windows 10 if you have certain accessibility issues. So we're going to go through some of these, and some of them we've already been through in previous modules. So if you remember, a couple of modules ago, we were looking at how you can make your text bigger simply by dragging this slider up or down to increase or decrease the text you see on your screen. And you can also make everything a bit brighter just by adjusting your brightness settings. Now let's look at some of the options that we haven't looked at previously. Now if I jump across into cursor and pointer, this is where I can control my pointer size. So the pointer size by default is reasonably small. So again, if you have any vision issues, you might find it quite difficult to see where that pointer is. So again, you can change your pointer size simply by dragging this slider up or down. And you can also change your pointer color. And you can also change it to a completely different color if you want to, so that really stands out. So if you can imagine, if you do have trouble seeing that small white pointer, you could change it to something like bright pink. You could also change the pointer size, and that's going to make it a lot easier for you to see. Now, one of the options which we haven't looked at yet is the magnifier. And the magnifier allows you to zoom in on parts of your display. And you can run the magnifier in full screen, in a separate window, or as a lens that follows your mouse pointer around the screen. So again, this would be for somebody who maybe has vision problems, who finds it hard to see text, items, commands that are on the display. So if I just turn the magnifier on, you'll see automatically it zooms in and magnifies what I'm looking at on this settings page. And I can control that using this little panel. So if it's zoomed in too much, I can click the minus to take that back down to 100, or I can zoom in again, and make it as big as I like. Now what I can also do is if I click the views drop down, currently I have it set to full screen. Now if I was to click on lens, and I'm going to actually take this up to 200%, you can see now this little square magnifier will follow my mouse pointer wherever I am. So if I want to see something in particular, so if I want to zoom in over here, I can just hover the magnifier over this section and it instantly magnifies that text but keeps everything else the same size. So that's a really, really nice little option if you do have issues like that. And of course, to come out, you can just click on that cross to close that magnifier down. Now there are some shortcut keys for that magnifier to make it super easy for you to toggle in and out of that mode. If you press the Windows logo key plus the plus to turn on the magnifier, and then the Windows logo key plus escape to turn the magnifier off. So let's just try that out. I'm going to hold down the Windows logo key and I'm going to say plus, and there we go. I get my magnifier back, Windows logo key and escape, and it turns it back off again. Now the next two options in this menu really relate to the color of items on your screen. So if you have issues with color blindness, or maybe you confuse certain colors, then this is probably where you're going to want to come and check to make sure that everything's set up correctly for you. So you can see here, color filters make photos and colors easier to see by applying a color filter to your screen. So if I was to select on to turn on these color filters, you can see that I have grayscale selected. Now what I could do is say inverted, and that's essentially going to reverse the colors on my screen. So now I have a black background and white text, which sometimes is a lot easier for people to see because the contrast is higher. And then right at the bottom, we have some color schemes that are really there for people who suffer with color blindness. So you can see it says, select a color blindness filter to make the 9 colors on the wheel more distinct. So we have red-green where the green is weak. We then have red-green where the red is weak, and then blue-yellow. So lots of options in there for people who have difficulty in seeing colors. We also have in here a high contrast area. And you can see here it says make text and apps easier to see by using more distinct colors. So high contrast colors in general are colors that are very opposite of each other. So that might be bright white text on a black background, or the opposite of that, a white background and black text. So if I turn on high contrast colors, you can see here it makes all of that text very different from the background. And of course, as always, you have different themes that you can select depending on which you prefer. And you can go a little bit further and customize how you want each element in that theme to appear. So currently I have text set to yellow, but if I click, I'm going to get my color pane come up, and maybe I want that to be a bright pink. And then when I click on apply at the bottom, I can save it as a new theme and then utilize that in Windows. Now I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to click cancel out of there and I'm going to turn off high contrast. Moving down this list, we have narrator. So narrator is a screen reader. So again, that describes what's on the screen so you can use the information to navigate on your device. And it can be controlled by keyboard, touch, and mouse. So again, if you have some kind of vision problem, then maybe you want to turn on narrator so you can gain a greater understanding of what's actually on the screen. And you can see just below here, you have various different options that you can customize if narrator is something that you want to use, including the narrator voice. So you can select the accent, you can select the language, and you have all of these different sample voices that you can use as your narrator. And if you want to, you can change the voice speed. So if it's a bit slow, you can speed that up. And you can also change the pitch of the voice and also the voice volume. So moving down our list, we're now moving on to options which are specifically for people who have trouble hearing. So if we click on audio, again, we can do things like change our device volume. Now remember, you don't have to come into settings to change the volume on your device. You can do that directly from the taskbar down here. So you see, if I click, I'm actually using a microphone at the moment and I can adjust my volume. And one nice little option down here is how alerts and notifications are handled if you are hearing impaired. So currently I have it set to no visual alert, but if I wanted to, in order to be notified that I have a notification, I can choose one of these other options. So I can choose to flash the title bar of the active window, I can flash the whole active window, or I can flash the entire screen. Other options that you have is the ability to turn on closed captioning. So you can see here it says make your device easier to use without sound by displaying audio as text. And you can see there a preview of what your captions are going to look like, and every element of this caption is customizable. And you can see underneath you can choose the caption color, the transparency, the style, the size, and even change the caption background. So if you do have vision or hearing problems, the ease of access area is definitely something you should be coming, again, to set things up that are going to make your life easy. Now, finally at the bottom, we have some interaction options. So let's click on speech. Now, most of these options would be for people who have some kind of limited ability when it comes to reach or strength. So instead of typing, maybe you possibly have something wrong with your wrist or your fingers, you can choose to talk instead of type using dictation. And you can see here there is a keyboard shortcut to turn that on. It's Windows logo key plus H to start dictation. And of course, you can also use Microsoft's inbuilt artificial intelligence Cortana to get things done. So instead of having to jump onto Google, type your question in, you could utilize Cortana to do that for you through your voice. You can also choose to dictate text and control your device using only your voice. And again, that's using speech recognition. So maybe you want to open Word and start typing a document. If you turn on speech recognition, you can do that by issuing voice commands as opposed to clicking with your mouse. If we jump down to keyboard, this is the section which will help you make it easier to type and also use your keyboard shortcuts. So the first option there is use your device without a physical keyboard. So if I turn that on, you can see that I get essentially this little floating keyboard. And if I'm on a touch device, then I can tap on the screen in order to use this keyboard, or I can use my mouse. Now, one thing that's going to make it easier for you to do keyboard shortcuts, particularly if you have some kind of issue with your wrists or your fingers, and you find it quite difficult to press Control and another key all at the same time, you can use something called sticky keys, which allows you to press one key at a time for keyboard shortcuts. So if I was doing a keyboard shortcut of Windows key D to display my desktop, if I've got sticky keys turned on, it just means that I can press the Windows key and then the D in order to execute that keyboard shortcut. I don't have to strain myself trying to do them both at the same time. So sticky keys is another really useful little feature. We also have the option to play a sound when we're using toggle keys. So for example, if we press caps lock or num lock or scroll lock, we can choose to play a sound to let us know that we've got that turned on. And then we have some other options here that you might want to customize. So one of them is the print screen shortcut. Now, print screen is a key on your keyboard that you can use to essentially take a screenshot of whatever is on your screen at that particular time. Now I'm going to turn this setting on because when I press the print screen button, I want it to open my screen snipping utility. And this is a really useful little utility that we'll talk about in later modules. Now the final two options we have down here are mouse. So I could choose to control my mouse with a keypad. So again, if I have wrist issues that makes it difficult for me to use my mouse, I could turn on mouse keys to use the numeric keypad to move the mouse pointer around instead. And you have various different options related to that underneath. And finally, we have eye control. So eye control lets you use eye tracking technology to control the mouse, type using an on-screen keyboard, and communicate with people using text to speech. Now, in order for this to work, you need to have an eye tracking device plugged in and installed on your laptop. But if you do have that, then this is where you can come to customize those settings. So those are all of the options that you have within ease of access. So if you do have any issues like that, it's definitely worth jumping in here and setting things up to suit you. Now, one final thing I want to show you is we're going to jump into Control Panel because, as I said at the start, there are also ease of access options from within Control Panel. So you can see here, I'm going to click on Ease of Access. And most of these are very similar to the settings that we've just gone through. But one thing that you do have in here is a little wizard that will essentially tell Windows 10 which settings you need turned on for the particular issues that you have. So if I was to click Let Windows Suggest Settings, you can see here it's going to take me through this little wizard and I need to answer 5 questions. So here it says, select all statements that apply to you. Images and text on TV are difficult to see. Lighting conditions make it difficult to see images on my screen. I am blind. I have another type of vision impairment. So you would go through and you would select the conditions that apply to you. Click Next to take you on to the next question. So essentially you can work your way through this wizard. Then at the end of it, Windows is going to turn on and turn off the settings that you require. And of course, if it hasn't got it quite right, you could jump in there and make any further minor adjustments. But I wanted to show you that because that does take quite a lot of the stress out of all of those options in ease of access. So that is it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. We've made it all the way down to section 5, where we're going to move on to talking about personalizing your Windows 10. So this is really the fun part where we get to do things like change our background picture, change the colors, personalize the start button, and look at themes. So let's start out with personalizing the lock screen. So the first thing I'm going to do here is just remind you of what my lock screen looks like. So I'm going to click on the Windows logo. I'm going to go up to where my picture is. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say lock. So you can see on my lock screen, I have a background picture. I have a couple of links listed on here. So in the top left-hand corner, I can get to my favorite sites from the taskbar with a quick click. I have a little like what you see link in the top right-hand corner. So this is referring to that background picture, which has been automatically generated for me by Windows 10. So that isn't a background picture that I've set, it's automatic. And by clicking that link in the top right-hand corner to say that I like what I see means that Windows 10 is going to carry on essentially sending me more photos that are similar for use on my lock screen. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I have the time and the current date. And underneath, it's showing me that I have 2 new emails ready and waiting. Then finally, over on the right, I can see that I'm connected to Wi-Fi, and I can also see if my battery is charged or not. So that is what I currently have on my lock screen. So let's take a look at the options that we have for personalizing that lock screen. I'm going to right click on the desktop and I'm going to jump down to personalize. And if we look over in our menu on the left-hand side, you can see we have lock screen. So currently the background I'm using is Windows Spotlight. So basically this is a picture that's generated by Windows for use on my lock screen. However, I have a couple of other options in here. I can go to Picture, and I can then choose the picture that I want to use on my background. So there are a few different ones that are available from Microsoft, and these are always quite nice pictures that you might want to choose. But alternatively, if you do have your own photo saved off locally, then you can click on Browse, and you can browse for whichever picture you want to use as your desktop background. We also have a slideshow option in here as well. So if you select this option, it means that it's going to cycle through the default picture folder and it will essentially make a slideshow. So if you want to use this option and you want to use your own pictures, you can select which albums you want to use for your slideshow. So you'll either have to move the pictures that you want to use into one of these default folders, or you can choose to add a folder. So if you have all of your nice pictures stored off in a different folder, you can choose that folder and it will use all of the pictures in there in the slideshow. And alternatively, if I wanted to just go with one picture, I can browse, and let's go for this one of the hot air balloons. Click Choose Picture, and there we go. So a couple of different ways there as to how you set that picture in the background of your lock screen. Now, one thing you will have noticed on my lock screen is that it was displaying the date and the time. Now you can see here it says choose one app to show detailed status on the lock screen. And I have that set to my calendar. Now I'm actually going to change that because I want to see the weather on my lock screen. So I'm going to click and I'm going to choose weather. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my calendar, so the date and time, showing as a quick status. So currently I have my mail notification showing, I have my calendar, which is fine, and I also have my Skype status as well. And if I wanted to, I can click these pluses and I can add other things to show on that lock screen. So maybe I want to add something like the Microsoft Store. Now it's worth noting with these that they won't show all the time. So for example, even though I've got Skype selected here as my quick status, because I don't have Skype running and I don't really use Skype to be honest, if there's nothing to show, it's not going to show on the lock screen. Now it's also worth noting that you can have Cortana showing on your lock screen as well. And there's a little link here, Cortana lock screen settings. And you can see there is a section here specifically for lock screen. So if you want to be able to use Cortana, even when your device is locked, make sure that you have this turned on. So now we've set those settings. I'm going to close this down and I'm going to lock my PC again so you can see the changes that I've made in action. So I'm going to click on the Start menu. I'm going to right click on my name and I'm going to say Lock. So now we've taken a look at customizing that lock screen, let's take a look at our desktop background. So currently I'm just using one of the standard images that's available in Windows 10. But if I right click my mouse and go down to Personalize, this is where I can change that. So again, I have the options of picture, solid color, or slideshow. Now in this case, I'm going to go for a picture. And once again, I have a choice of those standard images available from Microsoft, or I can choose to use one of my own photos. So I'm going to browse, and this time I'm going to use this image just here and click on Choose Picture. Now I'm going to minimize this window down a little bit so you can see that picture in the background. Now currently where it says choose a fit, I've set it to fill the entire space available. But you do have some other options in here. I could say fit. So essentially now I have two black lines down the side of my picture. Now the difference between fit and fill is that when I choose fill, it essentially zooms into that picture in order to be able to fill the entire space without distorting that picture. But what I'm seeing here is less of the picture than if I choose one of the other options. So it's really entirely up to you. If you don't want it to zoom in, if you do fit, then you're going to see that whole picture, but you might have some spare space down the side. Now the other options you have are stretch, which will distort it a little bit and just stretch it out to fill that available space as opposed to zooming in. You have tile, which is going to tile that picture. Now this is a pretty large picture, so the tile doesn't look particularly great because the picture is so large, but if you were using a smaller image, it would appear in tiles running across your desktop background. We have center. So again, that's going to zoom it in and put it right in the center, which actually looks quite nice on this image. And then finally we have span, which again fits your picture in a slightly different way. So it all depends how you want that to look. Now I quite liked the center option, so I'm going to choose that one. Now if you are using a solid fill as the background color, you can choose from the palette and you can choose any of these colors. Now, when it comes to personalizing some of the other elements of your desktop, if we jump down to Start, this is where you can personalize your Start button. Now, mine's kind of set to the defaults, but you can essentially choose which folders are seen on that Start menu. So if you remember previously, we came in here and we toggled this top setting on, which made my Start menu look much more like an older version of Windows where you only see the tiles as opposed to the tiles and the menu. I have Show App List in Start menu turned on, so our app list is this list running down here, but again if you wanted to you could toggle that off and then when you go in you don't see that app list. Now I like mine on, so let's switch that back on. I can show recently added apps. So again, I quite like this at the top so I can see the last applications that I added. You can show most used apps as well. So let's turn that on. And you can do things like use the Start full screen if you wanted to. So again, it's always worth jumping into here and customizing these options. And then right at the bottom, we can choose which folders we want to appear on Start. So when we're looking at this, we're talking about when we click on Start, you can see down here I have Documents, Pictures, Settings and Power. And this is where I would come to customize what's displayed on there. So for example, if I was to turn on Music and click the Start button, you'll now see that music appears just there. I could turn on File Explorer and now I have a quick link to my File Explorer. So a nice, quick and easy way to just customize those icons. Now the final thing I'm going to talk about in this module is this themes area. And you can come in here and you can choose an overall theme for Windows 10. So you can see here that because I've made some changes, so for example, I've just changed my desktop background picture to this file just here. I've changed my background color to Sage. My sounds are just the Windows default and my mouse cursor is Windows Aero. So this is essentially my theme. And if I wanted to, I could go in and I could save this theme as Deb's theme and click on Save. If I scroll down, you can see that there's lots of other different themes that I could choose. And I could even jump across into the Microsoft Store and download other themes. So for example, if we click on Synchronize Theme, you can see here that's going to change my background to one of the Windows default backgrounds. The color in use is Seafoam, so all of my tiles are going to be by default in that Seafoam color. And then my sounds are Windows default, my mouse cursor is Windows default. And if you wanted to change any of these, you can just click on the option, go in and change your color settings. Now I'm not going to delve too much into that, they're fairly straightforward. I'm going to leave you to have a play around, set a default theme if you want to. Now the final thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my theme back. So if we go to Personalize, Themes, I'm going to use my theme. And there we go. That's it for this module. I will see you in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome back to this course on Windows 10. We're down to the last module in this section, section 5, where we're going to talk a little bit more about managing tiles and applications. Now, we've spoken quite a lot already about this start menu area, and I really kind of want to round this part of the course out just by going through some of the options we haven't looked at yet when it comes to organizing and managing your tiles. Because really, this little area here is your central area. It's where you go to access your applications, your apps, and you'll see in a moment that you can even come here to access things like web pages and folders as well. Now, currently looking at this, I haven't customized it at all. It pretty much looks the way it looked when I installed Windows 10. So I have some default tiles that have been placed in there. And one thing that you will notice is depending on the device that you're using, you may find that the manufacturer of that device has placed some of their products or some of their web pages in the start menu for you. For example, I'm using an HP laptop, and you can see here I have a tile here for HP Jump Starts. That isn't something I installed. It literally came with my copy of Windows 10 on this HP laptop. So bear in mind, depending on the kind of device that you use and where it's been shipped from, you might have slightly different tiles to me. So the first thing we're going to talk about in this module is managing your tiles. I'm then going to talk to you about grouping your tiles, and then finally managing your apps. Now, we're going to be working a lot with these tiles, and we're going to start out by looking at how we can manage them a bit better. Now, one thing to be careful of here when you're doing things like this is that, remember, if you click on a tile, it's going to open that application. So just be a little bit careful as we're working through so you don't keep opening things that you don't need to. Now, I'm going to take this tile here, Microsoft Edge, which is essentially Microsoft's internet browser. You may have used Internet Explorer in the past. This is basically their latest version. Now, if I right click on that tile, you'll see that I have lots and lots of different options. I could choose to unpin this from the star area. Now, if I do that, it's going to remove it as a tile. Now, I actually like having that on my start menu, so to add that back, all I would need to do would be to find it in the list here, right click and say pin to start. What you'll also notice is that if I click on my desktop background, because I have Microsoft Edge as a shortcut on my desktop, if I right click, I also have the pin to start option in there. And there it is back again. Now, it's been re-added as the last tile in this list. So I'm going to move this back to its original location by clicking and dragging it and dropping it. So very simple to move your tiles around. What you'll also notice is if you right click on a tile, you'll have resize options. Now, the resize options that you see in here are different depending on the tile that you're right clicked on. So you can see for this particular tile, the only options I have are medium, which is currently set, or small. And you can see that that will reduce the size of that particular tile. I'm going to right click again and just resize that back to medium. However, if I click on something like mail up here and right click, if I go to resize, I have small, medium, wide, and large. Now, if we select wide, you can see it makes a wide tile, or if I was to go to large, I get a much larger tile, which takes up quite a lot of space on that start menu. But that can sometimes be quite useful, particularly for something like your mail app, because it's going to allow you to see the last emails that you got in the live preview there. So as you can see, this tile is what we call a live tile. It's showing me the contents of my email, and as that refreshes, if I get any new emails come through, this tile is going to update. Now, if you like live tiles, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to turn that off, again, if you right click and go to more, you can say turn live tile off. And instead of actually seeing the contents of my mail account, I now just see the mail icon. Now I'm going to make that a medium tile again. Other things that you have in here, so if I right click on, let's say, the weather app and go to more, I can choose to pin this to my taskbar. So if I find that I'm always using that weather app, if I select pin to taskbar, you can now see it down there in my taskbar ready to access. Similarly, if I right click on it in the taskbar, I can say unpin to remove that. Now some other options that you have when you right click, and again let's use this weather app. If I go down to more, I can jump straight to that app settings. Now this is an app, and so the settings I can change are fairly minimal, but it is just a nice quick way of being able to go in and adjust some of those settings for that particular app or tile. If we right click one more time and go to more, you also have a rate and review option. Now you'll only see rate and review in this menu if you're right clicked on an app. So that is a very specific feature that's only for apps. You won't find that on something like Edge, which is a Microsoft app. If we go to more, you'll see that we don't have rate or review. Now I want to really organize and tidy up my tiles. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm just going to remove any tiles for apps that I don't really use all that much. So I don't really tend to play games during the day. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say unpin from start. In fact, I'm going to remove this whole play tile. I'm going to say unpin folder from start. Now, solitaire, I do play that occasionally, so I'm just going to move that over here. Netflix, I like to watch on my laptop occasionally, so that can stay. I don't tend to go into tips too much, so I'm going to right click. And I'm going to say unpin from start. Now, this is probably an appropriate time to mention that unpinning from start is very different to uninstalling. Uninstalling will remove that particular app that you're clicked on from your PC entirely, so it's not going to be there. If you want to use it again, you're going to have to reinstall that back onto your PC. Whereas unpinning just removes it from your start menu. I'm also going to unpin HP Jump Starts and also McAfee. So very quickly, I've streamlined what I'm seeing on my tiles. Now here you can see a tile that contains lots of my applications, and these are probably the applications I use most often. Now they're all in one tile because this is essentially a tile folder. So if I click on it, it's going to separate out all of those applications. And you can see just above, it now says name folder. So I'm going to say Microsoft Productivity Apps and click away. Now I don't tend to use Skype, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to unpin that from start, but the rest of them I do. I also use Microsoft to-do lists, so that can very comfortably go underneath that group of productivity apps. Now this top group here, Life at a Glance, I actually quite like that title. If I wanted to change that, I could just click on it and I could rename that group as something else, but I don't mind Life at a Glance. So I'm just going to do some rearranging here. I'm going to move weather. And I'm going to change this explore group to say entertainment. And I'm going to put Netflix up there. I'm also going to put solitaire there. And I'm going to put the Microsoft Store at the bottom just there. And I'm going to name this group Store, like so. What I might want to do here is, because there's just one tile, I can right click, say resize, and I'm going to say wide just to move that across. Now you'll see here I also have a tile with an up arrow on it, and if I click it, it's going to minimize all of those productivity apps down into that folder. Click again to pull those out. Now remember, you can add anything from your apps list onto this start menu. So I've just recently installed the Twitter app, so if I right click and say pin to start, it's going to give me my Twitter app, and I'm going to drag that up to Life at a Glance, like so. Now it's also worth remembering that it's not just apps and desktop programs that you can add to this tiled area of the start menu. You can also add things like folders. So for example, if I jump to File Explorer and I want to add this exercise files folder to my start menu as a tile, I can right click on the exercise files folder and I can say pin to start. So now if we go back, you can see there is my exercise files folder. And I want to drag that down here and create another folder group where I say work files. I can then go back and maybe do the same with the course files folder, pin to start. And I'm going to drag that down here underneath work files as well. So again, when I expand that, that is what my tiles are now starting to look like. So as you can see, it is reasonably simple to customize the tiles that you're seeing there, create groups and move your tiles around. So a little exercise for you, which isn't a real exercise, but definitely something you should have a go with, is just customizing that whole area on your PC. Remove anything that you're not going to utilize frequently, pin applications you use all the time, and create your own groups to manage and organize those tiles.
If you're not a subscriber, click down below to subscribe so you get notified about similar videos we upload. Now, to see the full 7.5-hour Windows 10 course, click over there. And click over there to watch all the videos in this Windows 10 playlist.